Hey everybody, welcome to Lorebeards and Roleplaying. Oh wait, I'm on the wrong side of the screen. There we go. Hey. Randomly, I was on the wrong side of the screen. How did that happen? Okay, so get ready today because we are going to be talking about randomness in role-playing games, which is not just rolling to hit, but it's also the strange and glorious and occasionally very cruel ways that role-playing games let dice and cards and charts and procedures have little impact on the story.
Yeah, because a lot in tabletop games is determined by the dice and what happens with them. Not everything, but RNG is a crucial part of outcome generation and oftentimes story structure. So, we're going to talk about how that can play into campaigns, some famous examples, a little bit of math, a lot of storytelling, and hopefully this will be useful for figuring out how to randomize things, how random to allow things to be, and how to play with the numbers the dice give you.
Oh, I'm going to leave the math to you, Vera. That was never my best subject.
I know a little bit, not a lot.
Welcome to Lorebeards Roleplaying, everybody. Here on this show, we look into and dissect various things about role-playing games. Vera and I have been doing this for 2 seasons now. It's pretty great. Vera, who are you? So people who may not know you can know you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Vera Samila, also known as Verisimilitude. I am a online thing maker and a creator of many of the Warhammer tabletop games. I work on the fantasy side of things, primarily 4th edition, but also some on Age of Sigmar and the Old World RPGs. I do stuff, I make things, I think about games a lot. Hi.
Awesome. I also think about games a lot. My name is Ross Watson. I am a game designer and author. You can probably know me from things like Star Wars Edge of the Empire, Torg Eternity, Savage Worlds Rifts, most of the Warhammer 40k role-playing game line, and many, many more. And I've been playing role-playing games for a very long time, since about 1983. So, dear God, 43 years. Where does the time go? Dear Lord. So I've seen a lot of randomness. I've seen a lot of weird rolls.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, a pretty crazy range of outcomes are possible, right? Theoretically, you can min roll every time during a game session.
Vera, what would you say if I told you there is a fairly famous role playing game where you can actually die during character creation if you push your luck?
I would say that sounds like a really fun time.
It is actually a game that I have played and enjoyed. It's called Traveler. We'll have to talk about that.
I've heard there are a few like character creation paths where this could happen. Less common nowadays that you can die during them. Like Eclipse Phase has this. You can't entirely die. Bad things could happen.
It's kind of infamous with Traveler, and lately they've leaned into it with some of their advertisements. It's like, hey, remember the game where you could die during character creation? That's us. Which I think is great. Yeah, randomness in RPGs can mean a lot of things. It can mean everything from character generation to task resolution to even the way that the game master builds their campaign and stories can be done through randomness. And I have a good friend of mine who's also a game designer. He's said over the years that there's drama in the dice. I have seen the story change because of the way that dice rolls and random events can sort of happen. And we're going to talk about one of the most infamous ways that can occur, which is, of course, the deck of many things.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Randomness can be a lot of things. It could be just whether or not you pick a lock. It can be a random encounter table. Mm-hmm. It could be a character background table. It can even be a reason to leave home if you roll right on the character background table. But it can get wilder. And yeah, we're just gonna get into it. There's the legendary, infamous, and completely unhinged critical hit charts of Rollmaster. Are you familiar with those at all?
I am not. I am very familiar with them in the Warhammer tabletop games, but intriguing.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about them because this was the OG, was the Rollmaster. Also, Middle Earth role playing for people old enough to remember that. But yeah, today the heart of today's conversation is, when is randomness exciting? When does it create discovery and tension and memorable stories? When does it support player agency by making choices meaningful? And when does it become a campaign derailment?
So, do we want to start with why tabletop games are random?
Oh well, I'm sure you're gonna have a pretty interesting view on this. I'd like to let you jump on that one.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of the tabletop role-playing game sphere stems out of wargaming and playing games with little models of soldiers and warriors who you would pit against your friends to have things happen. And believe it or not, you can't actually simulate each of your little plastic Civil War army men having an entire battle plan and going into war against your enemies on the field. You need to simulate this somehow, whether they hit their shots, how effectively they carry out the commands they're given, how well you communicate these things. So dice were used just to simulate some level of possibility in battle, right? It's not otherwise possible, at least it wasn't, to emulate this perfect tactical map, right?
Well, this comes out of the fact that role-playing games originally were just basically, cowboys and Indians or cops and robbers. It was imaginary play, but there wasn't any factor to. There wasn't an objectively. I'm going to use the term fair here because it's not technically true, but still objectively fair way to adjudicate whether someone succeeded or not. Because there'd be a lot of kids running around like, "Oh, I got you. No, you didn't. I got you. No, you didn't."
Yeah, it devolves into playground stuff like, I got you. No, I have a powerful shield that blocks your bullets. No, I have the strongest gun. The bullets curve, like in that cool movie. Like, randomness made it fair. It introduced the arbiter of whether or not something would succeed. And good tactics still mattered because they influenced the die roll.
Yeah. So that's like the origin of dice in role playing, but you're also right that when Dungeons and Dragons was created, it was originally a war game that used dice to resolve things. And then like there's a story about how they came up with the polyhedrons because it was cheap. They had somebody wanting to get rid of a bunch of them, and they're like, "Oh, well, these could work for dice."
Yeah, like this has carried on into, I would say, most tabletop role playing games, right? Like I would say that random outcomes are primarily featured in almost all of them. Not everyone, because there are games you can play without dice. There are games you can play entirely in the mind.
Heresy, I say.
But okay, but we can debate whether or not those are games later. But for the most part, there is a randomized element to this stuff, and it carries forward. And oftentimes, it can be quite punishing if you have poor luck.
Listen, I am a proponent of there is no one true way to have fun, to be clear. But for me, specifically just for me and the way I like to play, you'll take my dice from my cold, dead hands.
I think I'm with you there, but we're talking about the breadth of the experience here. And a lot of that does stem from having these random outcomes, which we kind of like.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would like to start out by talking about randomness in character generation, if that's okay, because that's we were just talking about Traveler, which is a good place to start. 1977, classic Traveler. You had this push your luck mechanic. Now, pushing your luck is actually part of randomness, and I'm sure Vera will talk about why that's different than just roll to see if you succeed. Okay. But the push your luck mechanic in classic Travelers, when you were creating a character, you could go through different careers. And each time you went through another career, your character got older. They got more skills. They got like better as a character, but they also risked injury and eventually death. And it was a way to it was actually one of the earliest ways to generate your biography of your character through some form of a procedure, a random roll. So you could determine whether you were a failed naval officer or a merchant or a disgraced noble. And it gave you hooks for your campaign because it allowed you to sort of incorporate things like debts and pension benefits and enemies and contacts and regrets. And frankly, characters in Traveler, especially in the early days, got very old because, well, you wanted all those skills. So a lot of times you were playing guys like me. You were playing, beardy gentlemen who were past their prime in Traveler.
You could play as the Ross Watson.
I mean, you could. Now, when these survivor roles cropped up, in each career, one of them could be your character dies. And that was, I mean, it was a big thing. It was a big thing. 1981 introduced an optional alternative to make it just an injury, because obviously there were a lot of feel bad moments of somebody like, I have a really cool character. Oh no, he's dead. And I didn't even get to play. But there are people who love it, and there is a term for it. It's the Iron Man character generation approach for Traveler. Is you just push through. It's lethal. You go as far as you want to go. Caveat emptor. So,
And if your character dies, you're disinvited from the table.
Oh, I mean, it was never quite that bad. But yeah. Are you familiar? Have you ever heard of the Central Casting books, Vera?
I believe I have.
These books, okay, anybody who hasn't seen them, they're amazing. Highly, highly recommend. Ross Watson says, definitely go check these out. These were books of random life table events to build a very elaborate background for your character. They were created by a famous RPG designer, Chanel Jacques, who did a lot of stuff for the Judges Guild. There's a famous adventure they wrote called Dark Tower. Anyway, so the Central Casting books were just awesome because you figured out your family. How many siblings did you have? What was their social position? What was your childhood like? What kind of education did you have? Romances, enemies, tragedies, obligations, fortunes, major turning points in your character's life before they started adventuring were all determined through rolls. It created a skeleton or a scaffolding of your biography in a way that Traveler didn't. Even the life paths from Interlock system were not quite this developed. Okay.
So I'm going to step in here and be heretical and say that perhaps, just maybe sometimes it could be fun to like decide on all of these things about your character's history and personality and personal experiences in ways that don't involve randomly generating them on 50 tables.
Okay, I mean that is a very apt counter argument, but I will say this: I have met a lot of players who feel intimidated by a blank page backstory question.
Yes.
And frankly, the Central Casting books were really awesome for me because it was a story that I didn't expect for my character, and a lot of times it made characters for me that I was like, wow, this is a guy I would have never thought of playing, but now I kind of love him. And it supplied the game master with a lot of instant material without me having to write a lot of pages of backstory. I could just boom, 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 boom. 20 minutes later, I've got a bunch of bullet points I can hand over to the game master, and you say, okay, you've got this missing brother, and your hair is white because you saw a hag in the swamp one day. Okay, those are things I can deal with. But it can be melodramatic that doesn't fit the right tone. It can feel like fiction imposed from the outside rather than identity that you create through play. So I get it. But as a tool for people who just want to like see what the hell happens, Central Casting is where it's at, bro. Like that is the best background generator I could think of.
I think you've lighted on perhaps one of the core tensions between like deciding things with randomized outcomes versus a scripted outcome, right? Mm. Which is that randomness leads to discovery for everybody, right? And then that can replicate certain elements of the real world that can lead to verisimilitude, because like, life is like a box of chocolates and whatnot. No, it's the deep Tony will come up on. But a scripted outcome can be thematic. It can provide structure deliberately, and it can inform and play off of existing things in the game, whether they're like other characters' themes, whether it's a central idea you're trying to build the game around, and open up other possibilities that are perhaps more literary or at least more entangled deliberately with other characters.
Yeah, that's a good point. And again, I don't feel like there's one true way, and I definitely will say that many times on the show, but it's worth hearing from both of us because we have different opinions on this. And I think the perspective is really valid because I have been in games where I was so deeply invested in the group or the campaign setting that I absolutely steered away from randomness and kept to things that I felt would fit best with the group, fit best with the setting, or fit best with a character concept that I already had when I sat down.
Well, like, I've heard of games where the player characters were instructed to build their backstories and their personalities around the same theme from different angles. And that led to a really cool outcome where they were all built around this idea of like reflections of the self and introspection. And then that became a horror game that was really effective. I've also heard of the All Guardsman party, where it's like, all right, roll 50 guys on these random tables and we're going to churn through them now.
Oh, the funnel. We're going to talk about the funnel.
So these are different approaches that can inform play in different ways. I'm not trying to say one is necessarily better than the other also, although I definitely lean harder toward the literary, toward the handcrafted and deliberate. I'm scared of random generation because I want to tailor everything about my characters.
So fun fact, I had a group in Texas where I was working on video games at the time, and I had a group of players, and these guys were great, but they were also... They wanted to do things a little differently. They didn't want to be your like standard D&D group. And one of the things that they insisted on was randomness. They wanted to see all the dice rolls in the open. And we actually did an entire Pathfinder campaign, a short campaign, but a Pathfinder campaign that was used entirely random tables. We generated all our characters using central casting. We generated the adventures using other random roll tables. And they were like, let's just see what we get if we feed this in and just do a completely random game. And you know what? It was actually really fun and very memorable. Like, I still remember it today. So I think there's sometimes that value of discovery kind of can be novel enough to be a thing on its own.
Yeah, I think there is a really cool realm of possibility that opens up when you say, okay, RNGesus take the wheel. Also, all hail RNGesus, praise him. Thank you so much, Elemental. Thank you. Appreciate the super chat.
RNGesus.
You enter a realm where you're learning things as they're decided, which can be really thrilling, right?
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, I have to show off this product over here. It is, again, a product of a certain age, so it's very likely you're familiar with it, but it's called the Ultimate Powers book for Marvel superheroes, which was, one of those 80s products. It was one of the very first, in fact, I think it was the first Marvel role-playing game. And the Ultimate Powers book was, guess what? Random charts to generate your character completely randomly. And it had far more power choices than any of the other core books for Marvel superheroes. Okay, so you had a wider range of things you could pick up. Now, this book is blurst, I think is the term. It's both blessed and cursed. Because, okay, so you roll for your broad category, your powers, your individual abilities, your origins, your limitations. So instead of starting out with like, I am the superhero that I have planned to be, you are instead given this odd assemblage of powers and asked to discover what kind of person in the Marvel universe that they must be. And this is, on the one hand, it's delightful comic book logic. You get a character with some very strange or limited abilities or a mismatched power suite or an absolutely cosmic origin. And that's a design problem and a story hook at the same time.
I have a question about this book.
Yeah.
So it had a wide range of possibilities, right?
Oh, yeah.
Were they all weighted the same?
No,
ability-wise?
That's the thing, is that there was a weight on certain levels of the charts. But there was no backstop for the idea of power disparity. Okay.
So this tends toward an interesting possibility in character creation generation tables, which is that they can suggest things about your setting. An example many of us may be familiar with is the character creation in Warhammer Fantasy, wherein you have basically a 1 or 2% chance to be an elf.
Right.
They suggest something very clear about the setting, right?
Right.
Or like there's the game 10,000 Swords Against Heaven, where if you roll a Snake Eyes on your D6, I believe it's either boxcars or Snake Eyes, which is pretty hard to do, your character's a fascist.
Whoa.
That also suggests something, right?
Yeah.
This is a setting where like 8 out of 10 of the choices are some variety of commie.
Yeah, the demigod was a rare origin, for example, for a good
Right.
reason. But the problem with Ultimate Powers book, which is also it is a feature but also a bug, right? It's blurst. Is that you can have one player can roll a really versatile character with a lot of high power abilities, and someone else can get like almost nothing. And sometimes that's hilarious, and sometimes it is just not good for a campaign. Ultimate Powers book is great for creating characters for like a one shot. I would really strenuously tell you to avoid using it for a long term or deep campaign. But some of the characters I've generated with this book have stuck with me over the years. I rolled up a plant-based alien life form with his only power. His only power was martial arts supremacy. So I had the mighty shroom. And I was like, that character's amazing. I want to play him so bad. And another friend of mine rolled up like just the worst cyborg commando ever. With like really great telescopic vision and really terrible fire generation. And we joked that he could see a woman needing a cigarette lit from 1,000 miles away and then run over, just light the cigarette for her. And that's about it.
Did you call your Kung Fu plant monster a box elder?
Oh, that would have been, I wish I'd thought of that. God damn. Wish I'd have thought of that. All right, now you're familiar with the concept of funnels, right? You've talked about that a little bit.
Yeah. Like when you're at a party and they have the keg.
Right. Not that kind of
fun. Why don't you run us through it?
All right. So this is a concept made popular by, or I should say, made famous by Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is a very good game, and I do recommend it. And the idea of this is it's part of the game's premise. You generate somewhere between 2 or 4 level 0 characters. These are not polished adventurers. These are ordinary people. And they have they have stats and hit points and occupation and some equipment and stuff like that. But the opening adventure for this mob of characters, because if you have 6 players, that's anywhere from 12 to 48 characters. This opening adventure for them is deliberately highly dangerous. And the goal is to winnow this mob down to the characters who survive and reach the threshold to advance to first level and then get to choose their class. So your funnel might be like a cheesemaker, a mercenary, a farmer, an apothecary, something like that. And then you get to see which one of them makes it through the opening adventure and say, okay, this is my guy. It is, it does make heroism feel earned rather than selected because they don't start special. They just become special through their survivability. And the high lethality of the funnel can be a very darkly comic survival game. It can be, if you lean into the whole like vibe of the OSR, where death is kind of common and around every corner, and there's very little safety to be found, it can be hilarious and very memorable, right? If your wizard is the sole survivor of a village massacre, that's a lot stronger because you watched it happen. The whole table watched it happen, rather than a line in your backstory.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, and that is where RNG can be thematic. Like, this is a predictor of the conversation we're going to have a little later about how like difficult roles can play in a narrative, because if you're up against a bunch of ravenous fiends as a level 0 character and you keep switching scenes, everyone keeps dying horribly, when someone gets a lucky crit and splits their head open and runs away successfully, you're cheering, you're stoked, because they have done that for real, effectively, for realism.
Golden Cast says, oh, the gauntlet. Yeah, I think it has different names, but I believe my research tells me the most common term is the funnel.
I like the crucible, personally.
Oh, hey. Now we're talking. That's a very literary reference there. I dig it. Dig it. The problem with the course funnels is that it can be very logistically slow, very crowded. It's 4 characters per player. That's a lot to track. And if you're a player like me who prefers a more deeply intentional character concept, you may not like the idea of starting out with a bunch of disposable villagers, right? So there's issues with the funnel, but it is interesting to me, and I have used it, but it is not something I use a lot.
Yeah, like the challenge here is that if you wind up with a character you don't care for as the one that survives, like, all right, I'm stuck with this now, which can be a cool opportunity or a frustrating start to a year-long campaign.
Yeah. Okay. Question for you, Vera.
Mhm.
Just is disposable character creation a bug or a feature?
It depends.
Yay!
Like, there are a lot of different perspectives on what makes a character fun to play, right? And I tend towards, again, like the literary. I enjoy writing out possibilities and like different narrative structures they can build around. Like, okay, this character is a Byronic hero. This character is a moronic hero. This character is someone who is a meddler. This one is X or Y or Z. And usually I want to play into that and see how it's shaped by the events of a campaign.
Did you say moronic?
Yeah, that could happen.
Absolutely.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen Strongjaw, haven't we?
Yeah, it's the two archetypes of a tragic hero, Byronic and moronic.
Is that for real a term? I definitely heard the Byronic one.
It is now.
Oh my god! Okay, I love it.
I coined it. I coined it just for you. It's mint.
Nice. Oh, beautiful.
Anyway, I do love archetypes. I'm a certified archetype enjoyer. An arc demon, if you will. I think this is a fun space to play around in, and I tend to look for it when I'm creating characters. Like, it's satisfying to me to have a concept I feel fits both the setting and the party, and to let that evolve as we go.
Well, speaking of evolving as you go, I think the oldest and most clearest form of random character generation, and one you're almost certainly familiar with, is the idea of 3d6 in order for your ability scores in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes. Can I take just to explain what a Byronic hero is? Because I'm seeing questions about this.
For sure.
So a Byronic hero is effectively the bane of all new GMs. Lord Byron is the prototypical anti-hero, and this is a cool thing. This can be done very well, but when it's done very badly, you get my character sits in the dark corner and holds his hands together and scowls and pulls his hood over his face as the quest giver introduces himself to the rest of the party. He has no friends and no family. He has 10 swords.
I have an intentionally built character along these lines called Ravenblood Blackwolf Deathblade.
We love Mr. Deathblade. So I think this can be a great archetype. I think that a little bit of brooding and infectual behavior can be great, but it has to be balanced out. So I promise this can be done well. I play a lot of characters who are sort of under this umbrella, but they are all likable, because likability is, I think, one of the easiest ways to fit into a party.
Squid Busterson says, me when I have social anxiety. Me too, buddy. I'm right there with you.
You might be onto something there, Squids. I wonder. Anyway. I swear this kind of archetype where the hero has got like real flaws and is a drunk and fucks things up sometimes can be really fun for everybody at the table, but the player has to understand what they're doing and like deliberately make it. We'll talk about edgelords some other time.
Fair enough.
3d6.
Right, 3d6 in order. So the whole concept of this, if you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, there's 6 main ability scores. There's strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. And rolling 3d6 in order meant that you couldn't change the numbers, you couldn't rearrange the scores. You had to choose a class or a role that makes sense for the numbers that you generated in the order in which they were generated. So if you rolled a very high strength, but only average constitution, poor intelligence, and low charisma, you're probably going to be playing a fighter and probably not a wizard or a paladin, because the system's core message using this approach was that the dice tell you who arrived. Your job is to figure out who they are.
So, as you may be aware, in, I think, most editions of D&D, 10 is considered an average ability score.
Yeah, basically.
Allow me to show you the reason for this.
The bell curve.
Ta-da! This is what 3d6 looks like mathematically.
And I'm very familiar with this. We talked about a game called Champions a while back on this show. Every roll for resolution in Champions is 3d6. So I got very, very used to the idea of the numbers meaning like the particular percentage. I knew that if I had a 14 or less on 3d6, I was going to succeed the vast majority of the time. Whereas if I had an 8 or less to roll, the odds were very much against me.
And this is why, because if you roll 3d6 210 times,
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of the time you will roll between 7 and 14.
Correct. Or at least 3 to 14, which would also be a success under that paradigm. So, I mean, that's 80% of the time, if I'm reading this correct.
Probably a little more, because like it's distributed across like 216
Right.
total rolls. I guess it's
roughly 80% of the time.
It's pretty darn likely.
Yeah.
And as you can see, most of the rolls will be between 8 and 13 or so.
Right. That's where that's where your sweet spot is. Your zone is you're probably going to generate a number through those. Now, 3d6 in Order had its strengths and weaknesses. It prevented optimization from becoming the dominant part of character creation, which, let's face it, we were all young nerds once. That is definitely something we all do. It does also create unusual characters and party compositions, and this is where like point buy systems and your standard arrays, they tend to filter out like your real oddball characters and party compositions. But sometimes those can be fun. And it reinforces a world. This is where you're saying like the dice telling the story. This reinforces a world where adventurers are fairly ordinary people rather than curated collections of ideal builds.
Yeah, like most of your characters will have something they're really not good at, and hopefully something they're pretty okay at. And very few of them will have all of their stats be 3. Although that is possible.
Yes, technically
possible. That is possible.
Just like all 18s, it's technically possible. I turned in my character sheet to the game master and said, "Trust me, bro. I rolled so many times, my fingers went numb, but here you go."
Yeah, I mean, I guess one form of the Crucible is keep rolling until you get the guy who's all boxcars, right?
I mean, I have rolled a lot of dice. Let's just say that to get a character I felt was more competent. The problem with 3d6 in Order is that poor results can feel like a punishment, and that's before you even make any meaningful decision, right? And it can create. This is the big part about it, is it can create unfairness within a party, because one character can roll really well and another can roll really shit. And I have seen this happen at my table so many times that we ended up banning random character generation and stuck to point buy or standard array. And I have done that ever since. Like, it's been 23 years, and I have stuck to that because I have seen the rolling for stats go so badly in the past. I had a friend of mine named Eric. Eric, if you're out there watching, hey, miss you, buddy, but Eric rolled like shit on all of his character generation. This
Eric.
dude, I mean, he 3d6 hated him. Even 4d6 dropped the lowest hated him. And like he had a ranger whose like highest stat was a 13, and the rest of us are rocking with, like an 18, couple of 16s, and he's like, I can't blame him, right? Like, it's literally out of his control.
Well, this is again where discovery and like the RNG inherent to playing maybe a character who has nothing they're good at and what that can mean for the story runs into the narrative consideration of wanting to deliberately point by a character who can do the things you want them to accomplish sometimes, right? Because your stats matter, because they affect, you guessed it, further RNG later in the game.
So question for you, Vera. Should a role-playing game player be asked to take on a limitation for their character that they never chose themselves, like a low intelligence or a low charisma or a low strength?
It depends.
Yay!
Like, we went through character creation in various editions of D&D a while back during season 1, and
That's right.
there were a few different approaches in most of the books for this. Like, usually what they'd say is, hey, you determine your stats before you choose what kind of character you're playing, because you're not stuck playing a wizard who can't cast spells. In fact, that you weren't allowed to play a wizard if you don't have the int for it in some cases. And I think this can lead to cool outcomes and playing characters you might not have expected. It can also lead to grim frustration. So it depends on the kind of game you're trying to play, how long it's going to run, and so on.
Yeah, that's a good point. There is one category of character creation randomness that I don't want to cover here because we already talked about it, and that's in the Cyberpunk 2020 episode. If you want to go check that out, we talked about what life paths are and how they work. They're basically just a much simpler version of the central casting idea, where you roll a bunch of times to figure out what your background is. Cyberpunk 2077, the video game, does have a quote-unquote life path, which is the origin that you pick for your character. It's actually pretty cool. Dragon Age Origins also had this. So there are video games that have incorporated the idea that you can choose a slightly different origin for your character. And that can have an impact on what the game is like for you. So I think it's cool that it exists. System Shock 2, thank you, Born-She Crescent, also has it. But there is a game that we're both very familiar with that we need to talk about now. Dun, dun, dun. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Hey! And specifically, careers. So in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, careers define what your character does in the setting. Like, are you a rat catcher, a scribe, a laborer, a soldier, a boatman, a grave robber, apprentice wizard, bounty hunter, so on and so on and so on. In many versions of the game, this encourages random species rolls, class rolls, career results. And if you go down the route of the random rolls, which is kind of obviously the intended way, you actually get bonus experience points.
Yeah, it's encouraged via giving you a stronger starting character.
Well, is it stronger though? Because Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is a role-playing game where this is almost not unlike DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics, wherein you're kind of a level 0 character rather than a level 1 character. You are very much not a hero when you roll these characters up. It is a grimy, unequal old world, okay? And if you're lucky enough to roll an elf, like Vera was talking about before, you basically have it made no matter what you're going to play, because
you are playing a hero, yeah.
You are a hero, yeah. But if you roll a human or a halfling or even occasionally a dwarf, you are struggling. You are not a failed knight. You are a goddamn rat catcher, and that is your place in the world, and that says something about the setting, you know.
Yeah, like the fact that even among the military options for your career that you can roll into, you're all like you're basically a page. You're doing what you can to help out around the camp. You're not a imposing presence. You're poor. Your status is made very clear by what kind of character you are, and all of the starting careers are broke pretty much.
That's true. I remember my first time wanting to play Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and coming from the war game, you know, I was like, I want to play a warrior priest of Sigmar. Like, I wanted to play maybe not one of the biggest heroes in the setting, but certainly amongst the heroes of the setting. You know, these are warrior priests of Sigmar are guys who have like status and stuff and the ability to cast divine spells and things like that. They are someone to be feared, or at least respected. And that's what I wanted to play. And I show up and I'm like, what do you mean I roll randomly? And I rolled the agitator, and the agitator is the guy who runs around putting up pamphlets and like making speeches and like trying to get people riled up about a particular political agenda. And I was like, this is not what I came to play, but I learned to love that character.
I mean, speaking as a career change enthusiast, the fellowship you get from agitating is a great bridge to being a warrior priest of Sigmar. So Part of what's incentivized in Warhammer Fantasy is the idea of social mobility, because there's like strongly defined bands of different wealth levels for the careers, like this theme of the nouveau riche in Warhammer Fantasy, and you are encouraged to try and become something else if you're inclined towards it. So it can be useful to start in careers that aren't your target, for example. Like there's base talents and things that you might acquire from having a hard knock life that you wouldn't get beginning as a soldier.
And just like some of the other stuff we've talked about, it does discourage the conventional band of optimized fantasy heroes. It can create underdog stories because you can be a person with an ordinary trade who becomes an adventurer through luck, necessity, or competence. And the careers can supply built-in relationships and obligations, practical skills, and even believable reasons to care about mundane threats like rats in the sewer if you are a rat catcher.
I couldn't lead any cool adventures. Come on.
With your small but vicious dog. Yeah, Wes Luce points out that in Lawhammer, which is Andy Law's very own Wifrip game that's on that is associated with this channel, so go check it out, Lawhammer. Wesley says the rat catcher in that game became a Knight's Panther. Sorry for the spoilers, but those knights be rich. That's a hell of a journey. That is,
yeah, and I think that kind of ascent is common in long-running Warhammer Fantasy games. Like part of the idea is that there aren't like truly useless careers, just ones that are unglamorous and not useful in combat. But like lessons learned, perhaps as a tier 1 student, can be incredibly useful as a war wizard, perhaps. Or like if you're a singer, that could be a fantastic way to bridge into being a magister vigilant, or like there's all sorts of things that like lead into one another in some way. A miner turns into a stalwart knight. They're pretty rough and tumble.
Only once past 18.
I mean, in Warhammer, I don't know. they're putting the youngins in the battlefield.
I will say that I learned a lot from that first character, and when I had the option to start as a specific career, I sometimes took it because I kind of knew like what the goods and bads were, you know. But I still see the value in it. And the question I have for you, Vera, about this is, does the setting feel more real when it tells you what job your character has, or does it feel more restrictive?
I think what makes it feel more real is the distribution of probability. I think the fact that very few elves exist being made clear in the character creation suggests some important things about the narrative. The fact that it's so hard to play as an ogre, the fact that it's so rare to see a gnome, these tell you things about the setting. It's actively discouraging a party that's nothing but elves and gnomes and ogres. It wants everyman. It expects that, and it ties together that thematic knot for the setting itself.
Right.
And when you have randomly generated characters, it does add to that sense of verisimilitude. It adds to that.
Title drop.
It adds to that sense of what the old world is like, right?
Yeah. So again, a long career of role playing here, and I can tell you that I think that Warhammer's approach, the randomness of the careers, is very flavorful and very fitting for that specific experience. But I think like if you're more interested in like, I just want to play a fantasy role-playing game and not so much specifically Warhammer, that other approaches to character generation can be a little bit more rewarding because it's faster to get to the fantasy, the power fantasy, if you will, right? The idea of I'm a hero and we're going out on a quest, because that is your classic traditional fantasy stuff, right? That's kind of the core. And Warhammer being very dark, very grim, very perilous adventures. Hey, way out here on it's out here on a little bit more on the fringe.
Yeah, and like I want to say, I don't think that Warhammer is a low fantasy setting, but I think that Wifrip deliberately has its roots in low fantasy.
Oh, I would. So there's an important distinction to be made here. We really need to cover Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay on this show, because the Warhammer Fantasy setting and the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay worlds do not always align and have not always aligned. They have, in fact, at times been entirely different settings.
It is very possible to build into a party that is a war wizard and a knight of the empire and, say, a waystalker and a slayer. You can have that. But it's going to be a 5-digit XP total.
It also is an interesting mismatch in expectations because the miniature game and the lore and novels and stories around that are told from the perspective of that setting where the heroes are those things you just described. And there can be a major mismatch in expectations when you're like, cool, we're going to play Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and guys like me, okay, I'm going to play a warrior priest, and yeah, that's just not happening, bro. Why would you think you get to play that was actually the question asked to me when I showed up at the trailer. And I was like, because it's Warhammer. And they're like, yeah, it's not the same thing. This is not a game about warrior priests and knights. This is a game about rat catchers and boatmen and agitators. And I was like, oh.
I feel like that's a little I don't agree with that lens, but it is a game that is rooted in rat catchers and agitators and boatmen.
Yes. You're right that it is not always that, but it is often that.
I am an adamant defender of D100 and SL systems. I think they're very good and they scale very well. And we'll talk perhaps later about like how RNG can affect the longevity of a game.
Many of my career is built on D100 games. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Who do we know that's like a proponent of D100 games?
Interestingly, though, all of the Warhammer 40k roleplay stuff that I worked on does not have a random career, just to be clear. So that is one of the differences. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, like it suggests something different when there's career randomization, and like having a distribution chart suggests something different. It's not always appropriate for some games, though. Like there are games where like every character is necessarily quite exceptional, and where perhaps the mechanisms behind why aren't as important as who they are, and then you'll see like different random charts and so on.
Oh boy! So Golden Chaos is saying that low fantasy is a terminology that is almost useless. We probably need to do like a nomenclature episode where we like, okay, this is what this means, this is what that means. You know, the difference between dark fantasy, high fantasy, low fantasy. You know, there's a lot to get. It's like heavy metal bands. Like if you start trying to break down heavy metal, there's so many subcategories.
Oh God, I can't read any of those logos, Ross. It's too hard.
But we should talk about that sometime. All right, so I think that's about all I wanted to say about randomness and character generation. Did you have more that you wanted to talk about for that, or?
No, I think that kind of covers it. We can talk more about dice. I love dice. I love math rocks.
Why don't you get into that? Let's talk about that.
So we're talking about 3D6 earlier, right?
Right, the bell curve.
I want to show you its big boy cousin, which I think many of you will be familiar with. This is 4D6 drop lowest. As compared to 3D6.
Look at that. And look at that distribution. Oh my God, it's beautiful.
You will notice that compared to the distribution that lands on 10 and 11, this one lands on 13, which makes your characters more heroic.
Oh, just look at the difference between on 17, right? 18 is a lot closer than you think, but 17, that's a huge jump.
It is roughly 3 times as likely that your character will have a stat that is 17 at least, and almost impossible if they have stats of 3 or 4.
That's really that does change the paradigm quite a bit.
So we still have random generation here, right? But with a little bit of math, suddenly the range of possibilities tightens up a lot toward the heroic side, right?
And I can say this from my experience: the 3D6 in order did not last long for me. Like we were done with that by like 86, and from that point until probably third edition comes along around 2000, right? So between 83 and 2000, so about 17 years of my life, 46 drop the lowest was the preferred method because it made for better characters.
Yeah, because like your character is literally better at what they do when they have more stats. And it's very possible to build RNG and tune RNG into a way that enables the kind of storytelling you want your game to have. And I believe this was offered from quite early on. Wasn't this like in second edition as an option?
I think it actually rolled around in advanced, but just to be clear, there's the additions to Dungeons & Dragons, which we need to do an episode on really badly, can be broken down in a lot of ways, but effectively there's basic D&D and then there's advanced, and advanced is kind of like a second edition, although it's not actually the second edition. Sorry, yes. It's very nuanced. we'll have to get into it.
I love nuance. So the reason this is so important, right, is that having a skill of 14 instead of a skill of 10 can actually affect other probabilities quite a lot later, right? And stronger characters allow for easier tuning and stuff. Because can we jump into 5e a little bit to talk about like RNG outcomes?
Well, it's more than that too, if I may.
Yeah.
Remember that in this era of Dungeons & Dragons, your stats actually determined what classes were open to you.
That's true.
So the 46 drop the lowest not only created more competent characters, it gave you a wider range of choices for what that character could be, generally speaking. And these were things that I will say directly impacted the fun of role-playing games. It made it more fun to have more choices and be more competent.
Yeah, because feeling empowered by the random outcome is kind of nice, because like it adds that tension, but then you succeed. It's literally gambling.
Oh, you got a super chat from Vonnie DK, my birthright buddy.
Yeah, Vonnie, thank you so much.
Looking at that distribution with the paladins must have 12 strength, 9 con, 13 whiz, and 17 charisma is very interesting. Yeah, paladins and I think was it bards or monks back in advanced had to have like a whole bunch of stats that were above a certain threshold. I think it may have been at different times. I think it was both bards and monks, depending on what era. Yeah, he's right. So there were certain classes that required. They were inherently rarer because they required higher stats.
Yeah, like I think that even if only 4% of the time, 4.5% of the time, a stat is at least 17. Oh, 15. Yeah, 15 is like way more likely. Like you're almost certain to have a stat that has at least 15 in it somewhere in your distribution with this kind of 46 drop lowest setup. It enables more kinds of builds. It's just more flexible. It's more empowering, right? And there is an element of power fantasy in D&D, which, surprise, is at odds with random outcomes.
Well, the distribution here and the requirement for 17 charisma on a paladin, that is roughly equivalent to rolling a 20 on a d20. You would have to nat 20 your character creation to get a paladin.
Unless you can rearrange them, in which case it gets far more likely.
Arrange to taste helps. That's true.
Yes, by a lot.
That's still like a 16 or higher on a d20.
Which is not easy, but is not as prohibitive as 3d6 keep the number, fuck you.
That's a good way to think of it. 3d6 in order, fuck you. That's not a bad way to think of it.
I would find it refreshing if I set them at a table and they were like, okay, roll your character, 3d6 in order, fuck you. Okay, we're playing a game now. Cool.
And with the right group and the right concept, that can be awesome. It can be a lot of fun. We tell you on the show, there's no one sure way to have fun. And some people really dig the whole Iron Man, I get what I get approach.
Yeah, like I think that it's like a different style of play for sure, but one that's fun in its own right. And like ultimately, the difficulty of the die will shape your table's feel a lot beyond just character creation. like tuning probability is a really important part of running the game. Because effectively, when you make a monster, when you put the party in a situation where they have a skill check, you are estimating how likely they are to succeed depending on how well they plan to do the thing they kind of need to do to move the plot forward in a positive way. And this is where you get into decisions such as, well, should this be a roll? And how hard should it be? And should I let them create their own success in narrative ways?
Didn't we talk a little bit about that in our DMing episode?
Yes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it now because it's really important. It's like really, really important because it's where TPKs happen. It's where players lose interest because they can't fail.
Yeah,
I would like to.
Yeah. Choosing when to roll. That's I think a very important DMing skill to learn.
Oh, we got a super chat here from the exiled one, Ross.
Oh, sure. Why don't you read it?
Yeah, thank you so much for the super chat. I do have a player that with 46 dropped the lowest. The highest stat she got is a 13. I don't know the math on it, but I'm always concerned. I would call that highly unlikely.
But the Will Wheaton effect does exist. There are people out there who just tend to roll really shit.
There is a bonus rule that has been used at my tables for 46 drop lowest, where if your total base stats add up to less than the average roll, like they're on the fully left side of the curve, you can reroll. This creates very strong characters. So
well, there's a reason why standard array and point buy became so common, right? It's because that yours is not the only table that came up with house rules to mitigate the effects of rolling stats.
Well, like point buy is consistent and it's narrative. It's just less like thrilling because you don't get these outcomes where, oh my god, my character's like super strong. Holy shit! It's more bounded and more grounded and more inherently balanced.
More bounded, more grounded, and inherently rhyming. I love it.
I can't help it.
Oh, right. The 18 double-lot strength is something Warranty Crescent's reminding us of. Yeah, that was yet another part of, because in the old in Advanced Dragons, you could have a percentile attached to your strength stat if you were a fighter, and there was the possibility of getting the mythical. I mean, it was so good. The 18 double-lot strength was so good. I can't tell you how many Baldur's Gate 1 characters I rolled. My finger got tired of clicking the mouse to get an 18-100 character strength.
Sounds like Buckshot.
It sounds like another 18 double-lot buck.
So, in terms of like the outcome of rolls in game, I want to show off a little more math. I know it's scary.
Oh, let's do it.
And this might be a disillusioning one for some people. This is advantage.
Wow. Okay.
And disadvantage.
Interesting.
And this is how they function. So what the target is on the left is the actual number you need to roll in the die to succeed. So if your target for the roll is 18, but you have +6, you need a 12.
I have heard this described for layman's terms as it's basically a +5 or -5 advantage.
Yes. So like in terms of the actual roll on the die, it's something like +3, but in terms of the actual math, it's more like a +5. And why that is weird.
Well, it fits within 5th edition's bounded accuracy where 5 is the maximum you're typically going to get as a bonus or penalty. So I can see why it works out math-wise with what they were intending. But I love the elegance of the advantage disadvantage because it's so easy to understand for a player to be like, oh, I roll 2 dice to pick the best, or I roll 2 dice to pick the worst, and it removes a lot of, I would argue, burdensome mathematical calculations at the table, which was one of the issues with 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder.
Yeah, it's intuitive, and it quite dramatically skews the probability of success in some cases, right?
Like, yeah, look at the 10. The 10 goes from 55 to almost 80%. Holy crap.
Which is sort of like a +5, right? More or less.
I mean, that's a pretty big jump. That's taking it from like an 11 to a 17. I mean, that's a dramatic leap.
So if you think about when advantage is gained,
yeah,
it's usually the result of either a meta point or a really good narrative decision, right? And it makes things highly likely to happen. It's pretty strong at this. In contrast, disadvantage makes it almost fucking impossible to succeed when you require a high result.
One of the things I really like about this chart is it actually shows you how difficult it is to roll double 20s. The 0.25% on the disadvantage chart. That's how often you'll get double 20s on 2d20s. That's pretty cool. I also like to break down that. I mean, look at the difference between on an 11, right? 50% chance on a d20, 75% with advantage, and only 25% with disadvantage. That's about as stark as it gets, right? That is that makes it very clear, like, what the impact is.
Yeah, it turns good odds into bad odds or into great odds, and it has a strong impact. And why it's an elegant system is because it makes a narrative beat really skew probability. It makes things line up to how you expect a thematic shift in your success odds are. Like, okay, you've got a really good plan, you get advantage. This was really stupid, you gain disadvantage, and the outcome usually will reflect that, but not always.
I mean, even if all you need is a 19 with advantage, that's like 20% of the time. That's pretty good odds.
Yeah, so like having a good plan to do something extraordinarily difficult makes the heroic outcome happen a lot more often, right? And that is a way to make the probability of the game organically, reflexively line up with the sort of narrative outcome you hope is going to happen, which is hard to do in the heat of the moment.
D&D mathematics with Professor Vera. Do you have a professor hat you could put on? Because this would be awesome if you could.
Yeah, I got you. Hang on.
I love it. There you go. Better? I think that's a hamster, but all right. I'll allow it.
It's some kind of small and cute thing.
Dig it.
So I know this is a lot of numbers, but what it boils down to is this idea that being able to intuitively change probability is great for tailoring outcomes in a way that is rewarding and thematic and appropriate to the narrative. But RNG wins. No matter what, RNG can win. Even if you have the perfect plan and a really easy target for your roll, it can still fail. Not often, but that can happen. 99.75% is not 100%.
That's true. That is absolutely true. This is a great graph. I appreciate it.
I think it's useful to visualize this concept. Anyway.
Now, speaking of, like, the RNG can always screw you. What would you say if I told you there was a magic item that could completely destroy your D&D campaign in a matter of seconds? And it's been in the game as long as I've been alive.
I would say I want to draw 10 cards.
That's right. I'm talking about the deck of many things. This is... Woo! It's infamous. I'm actually considering putting it into my current role-playing game of 5th edition. And I am a little... I got to be honest, it creates a little bit of anxiety in me because I know how this can impact a game. This is the extreme end of random design, because it's not just an unpredictable combat tool. It is a high stakes danger engine, and it can radically affect your characters. It can affect their wealth, their status, their enemies. It can even affect whether or not they have a soul.
So why don't you break down for us what the deck is? Because I assume there are many things in this deck, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. So, wow. The deck of many things. It is an artifact level magic item in Dungeons and Dragons. It takes the form of a deck of cards. The cards have tarot-like faces on them. They're not really numbers, but the individual card has a very specific meaning, unlike tarot, which is more interpretive. And the specific meaning of the cards, there's usually a fairly even mix between good and bad cards. But the reason why the deck of many things is considered so infamous is that the good things can go from pretty darn good to holy crap, that's amazing, and the bad things can go from, well, that sucked, to my character is dead and gone and no one maybe even remembers him. And you can see how this could radically change the trajectory of a typical Dungeons and Dragons campaign. You could be rolling right along, you're going from ruin to ruin, from dungeon to dungeon, you're working your way up to fighting Vecna, and somebody draws a card, and all of a sudden your high-level paladin is just gone, and the rogue like now has a keep and a fourth level knight follower, and maybe a wish or two.
Yeah, like, to go back to like math, about half of the outcomes in the deck are really bad.
Really bad.
Ruinously bad.
Like a spirit of death shows up and you have to fight him alone in order to survive.
And for obvious reasons, this can derail the game because it is a full change in what's happening and the stakes of what's going on. And even some of the good outcomes can ruin a game, frankly.
Yeah, because giving a bunch of wishes to a third level character who's just starting out on his mission may make the rest of the campaign feel fairly trivial. And how do you top that, right? Like, I pulled the card out of a deck, got 3 wishes. I mean, that's about as good as it gets.
Yeah, it's a so-called good outcome.
I mean, that is what I would say is a good outcome that can still derail the campaign. Because then, whatever the rest of the session is, it's about the wishes. You know that. Everybody knows that, right? Like, if you give a guy 3 wishes, that's the rest of the game session, baby. Everyone's going to be trying to figure out how to use those wishes.
Yeah, like, there's a lot of ways that it can cause a strong shift in what's happening, right? And, like, if you want that and you want, like, crazy outcomes to occur, RNGs just take the wheel.
So the thing about the deck of many things is it has been a part of D&D for so long. Like I said, it came out in 1975, so it is 51 years old, just like me. That is a long time. It has gathered a mystique and a cachet and a gravitas of its own. And when you introduce a deck of many things into the campaign, it has a pull to it. It has like, oh, we're dealing with a legendary item. We're dealing with something that you could talk to any other D&D player about, and they'll be like, I know what you're talking about. It's a shared experience almost. It becomes a bragging rights or a war story about how your campaign died one day. And these are actually a big part of what makes a role-playing game community, is those aspects, right? So the deck of many things is partially the glue that holds D&D together, and also partially like the worst thing you can do to your campaign.
Well, like, theoretically, it could be a really cool moment, perhaps, to, at the ultimate moment when all else is lost, draw a card from the deck and lose 1d4 wisdom.
Oh, that's a feel bad. That's definitely a feel bad. Like, the basic structure of the deck of many things is voluntary, though, because you have to announce how many cards you want to draw, and then you have to draw them. There's no takesy backsies. If you say you're drawing 3 cards, you're drawing 3 freaking cards.
Yep, you're gonna do it.
So it's voluntary, at least in the fact that you can be like, I am not going to engage with this, which is a perfectly valid and probably very smart decision to make.
Well, and it's predictable in that if a card is drawn, it cannot be drawn again.
Right, so you can sort of determine the trajectory of the deck as it goes along, right? Because if people draw a bunch of good cards, you're like, well, my odds of drawing a bad card have gone way up, and vice versa.
Well, it's funny that this is set up tremendous high. We needed a math term. What is the best number of cards to draw? This is literally card counting. This is literally card counting in blackjack. Because I, believe it or not, I'm a blackjack player. I'm a winning blackjack player. I'm up like $500 or something. It's all about understanding which bad cards have been pulled by the morons in your party. When they have pulled like maybe 5 and the deck is 5 bad cards down, maybe you pull 2 yourself because your odds of getting 2 winners are pretty high.
Get me.
Exactly. Is this a guarantee? No, but it is an outcome shaper. It is more likely than 46% to get something good.
Vadi DK has a long anecdote. I'll read this one and you'll read the next one, if that's all right.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Vadi says, time for an anecdote. Planescape campaign that had been going for a few years at this time. We bought a city block in Sigil. Ooh, that's a really cool home base. Used it for living and temple, forge, etc. Anyways, we had a bar built that was used by different planar inhabitants, and we had found a deck of many things in an adventure, and bar patrons would sometimes challenge each other to each draw a card from the deck. We made quite a bit of cash from that since we charged 5,000 gold per card. Wow.
This could be very exciting, depending. There could be horrible violence in this bar.
This is the part of the show where I say super chats are the absolute best way to support our show. If you like our channel, if you like more Lorebeards content coming at you, then super chats are the best way to keep the lights on and to help us out as the hosts individually. So we are always very grateful to everyone who chooses to support us with a super chat. And we got one from
so much.
Blaz Hugh. This is the first time I think we've seen Blaz Hugh. Welcome.
Yeah. Blaz says, joining late, you may have already covered it, but interesting hearing about multi-axis roles like FFG Star Wars with success, fail, and advantage, disadvantage. Succeeding with despair was always fun. We have not yet talked about funny multi-axis dice, but I think we ought to.
I think we briefly just talked about it in the Star Wars RPGs episode, but
not on in this episode. We did talk about
not this specific episode. We covered it a little bit in the Star Wars RPGs episode. We did.
Because we've talked today about how like advantage or disadvantage in 5e can allow narrative to shape the outcome of a roll, but not how the outcome of a roll can shape narrative beyond success or failure, which is a cool multi-dimensional thing that is relevant. Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely true. I was one of the designers of Star Wars: Age of the Empire, and I can tell you a little bit about how that dice mechanic came about. I can tell you my opinion on it. And it may be controversial. I am not a big fan of it specifically, but it is I do regard it as a very valid and interesting way to do a dice pool mechanic. The short version of how it came about is that Star Wars, the role-playing game for Fantasy Flight, was built on the bones of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd Edition. And Warhammer Fantasy 3rd Edition, the mandate from on high was to make it the most innovative game on the market. No pressure. It did, in fact, cause the designer to have a stroke. So there was some pressure involved. Anyway, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd Edition was basically a market failure for a number of reasons. It had a lot of fiddly bits. It was a $100 box set. It was a grand departure from the previous 2 editions. And anybody who plays 4th edition will know that it went right back to its origins rather than stay the course.
I do love how it handled a lot of things thematically in the setting. Though, like I think that its handling of petty magic specifically is spectacular. Big fan.
There's a supplement called Blackfire Pass that I helped write, so I'm part of it as well. Anyway, so Fantasy Flight then got the license for Star Wars, and we were like, hey, what can we do with this system that we've spent a lot of time developing and creating? And we said, well, let's just take that dice pool and move it over to Star Wars. And the thing about the dice pool that became the Star Wars dice pool is that this was Jay Little, the designer's approach to broadening the impact of a dice pool without adding more dice. Like the goal was you always have the same amount of dice. You can occasionally subtract or add based on circumstantial factors, but it will never be a dice pool that grows or shrinks dramatically, which is how dice pools had basically been handled in the past. And so he created the idea of the axes, where there's success, failure, but there's also advantage, disadvantage. There was also there was a light side, dark side one, and various other things. My opinion, having, obviously I played a lot of it because I helped design it, and I've ran campaigns of it. But my opinion of it is that it does not suit my particular style of play because the results actually cancel each other out. It is possible in Fantasy Flight Game Star Wars to roll the dice and end up with a null result. It's rare, but it is possible for everything to cancel everything else out. And I don't really like dice that don't do anything. Also, I feel like the narrative element of it is very creative and interesting, but it's also burdensome, especially for players who are not great at on-the-spot improvisation. And it can often fall to the game master to have to describe every single roll narratively. How did you fail with advantage again? Well, you got slightly closer to your goal, but you still didn't quite get there. And you can only do that so many times where you're like, I'm out of ideas, guys. I don't know. Yeah, it's a very interesting mechanic. It's a very well-designed mechanic. I think Jay did a great job with it. But yeah, it's not my preferred method to play Star Wars. However, as you point out, it does allow for a wider range of results than you typically see. Which is, it's part of the ongoing march of RPG design, because initially it was just success or failure. Around the time of the 90s, we started getting into the idea of degrees of success and degrees of failure. Like, did you succeed? How well? Did you fail? By how much? And now we're in, even more interesting territory with multi-axes results. Wrath of Glory incorporates this a little bit. It's just one die that only matters on a 1 or a 6. So I didn't entirely jettison this concept for my own designs. But yeah, it's an interesting part of the evolution of how dice can change the effects of a story, and it can create memorable, even more memorable results.
Yeah, like at its best, it can create like incredible moments and enable really cool storytelling, but it does require you to be at your best to bring out the most of it. And if the results come up in certain patterns, they can get quite demanding. But I think it's a really cool idea. It's a cool design space.
Yeah. And it's fair to say also, like, you've probably heard the term, like, doctors make the worst patients. Game designers often make the worst players sometimes, because we see all the how the sausage is made, in the background of these things. And it's possible that why I had the reaction I did to this dice is because I was part of the design team, and you just see how the sausage is made a little bit more. It loses some of that mystique that a regular player may just overlook entirely. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got another one from Tremendously Okay. What a great name!
Heck yeah. Have some money. You really like the show. Keep the good work. Thank you so much. It means the world. We're gonna.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thank you.
Wow. All right. That's a story about the Star Wars D6 dice pool that I have had in my back pocket. I'm glad I got a chance to bring it out and talk about it. Oh, there we go. Blaze Hugh. Edge of the Empire was the first system I DM. Thanks, Ross. Hey, thank you, buddy. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Glad you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to work on. If you like the Gand, I'm the reason the Gand is in the game.
I do like the Gand. I do like them. Heck yeah, I didn't know that. What the heck? Wait.
Yeah, that was one of my contributions to Edge of the Empire, was insisting that one of the starting characters be a Gand. Wow. Oh man. So in the Star Wars RPG episode, I think we talk about like the genesis of that game. Like, I talked about how it came to be, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So, Blazy, if you're really curious, you want to know more about how Edge of the Empire came to be, go check out our Star Wars RPG episode, because I think I went pretty deep on like my experiences of being part of the team that built it. Anyway,
I found that fascinating as a Star Wars nerd. I was very invested in this.
Oh, Mortis Crescent is a great comment here. He says, our table has a published game writer. Have you ever been able to hear someone bite her tongue over a Discord call?
No, but I do know what it's like to clamp my own voice with my teeth to avoid saying certain things during a Discord call.
Yeah, I've been there, buddy. I've been there. So yeah, the deck of many things. Get back to that. It's routinely called campaign breaking because its consequences bypass all of the ordinary campaign structures. It is chaotic, very powerful. The game master can, of course, omit or alter cards to make it less disastrous. But it's really the thing about this deck of many things. It's not so much about power; it's about the social contract. Because if you sign up for a D&D game, you have consented to a certain amount of risk and reward. You've signed up for the idea of a certain experience, but did you consent to the whole campaign being changed into somebody's, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride with all of the wishes they got? Or alternatively, now we have to go save the paladin's soul from hell when you really want to do is save your home village.
There are very few choices you can make in a campaign of D&D that can have instant, irrevocable, and super dramatic effects on your character or do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It is a slot machine of disastrous proportion. It is like anything can happen effectively. And
yeah, but
it's derail.
You're right. It's gambling, but you're not gambling with your own character. You're gambling with the campaign.
That's true, because your problem is the group's problem, right? Like pretty much all the time.
The deck of many things is everyone's problem all the time, basically. So yeah, I am. There's a whole supplement for it for 5th edition that's actually really cool. It comes with some really interesting character backgrounds that come from like my father drew a card from the deck, and this is what happened to me, which I love. It's a fascinating. I've got it on the shelf like right over here, and I'm excited to bring it out into play because it is such a classic, massive thing in D&D that I really want to feature at least once. But my heart just starts pounding when I sort of like, oh my god, this is going to be either amazing or terrible or maybe both. Did you want to say anything more about the deck of many things? Because there are other transformative, chaotic magic items and effects in D&D that we need to talk about.
I draw 2 more cards.
Let's go gambling, says Godzilla Rex. Oh yeah. All right, so the one I want to talk about next is actually a much more entertaining and less game-breaking item, but it is an item that can change the tone of your game. That is the Wand of Wonder. You're familiar with this one?
I have heard of the Wand of Wonder. I don't think I've ever seen it used. It is a wondrous wand. It is a possibly very disruptive wand, and it is a less skewed toward disaster wand. Like most of the outcomes are like neutral to good for you, right?
Yeah, but they can be very goofy. Like if you are running a very serious game and, in the midst of Game of Thrones, the wizard pulls out a wand and a cloud of 600 butterflies comes out, that can be a little immersion breaking. It can be a little odd. You might want to, blast your enemies with the fireball and end up casting invisibility on yourself.
So I wonder, Ross, what's the Wand of Wonder?
It is a magic item where you roll randomly on a chart to see what happens whenever you use it. And some of these are like, some of the results are fairly like standard spells. Fairy Fire, Gust of Wind, Stinking Cloud, Lightning Bolt. Sometimes it's things that can happen to you. Like you can actually be stunned until you lose a whole turn, basically. Or you can create heavy rain or an animal, or like a random animal. It could be anything from like a rhinoceros to a rat to an elephant. You can make the cloud of butterflies, like I said. You can make the grass grow. It gets very. It's strange and random in an interesting way. It's another classic item. It's been around almost as long as the deck of many things. It's just the player character has to choose when to activate it and where to aim it, but you don't get to choose what it does.
Few of the results are as dramatic or good or bad. I think none of them are as dramatic as any pull on the deck of many things. Right.
Like it's losing a turn is about the worst it gets. Right.
It's largely either useless or things that are kind of beneficial.
Right.
It's just out of your control. It creates discovery. It's less of a risk for you, but it's silly.
It is. It's a little silly. This is the reason I bring it up, is because it is a magic item that is explicitly on. This was something you could just roll randomly in a Dragon's Horde, right? And it could change your campaign because it makes the game inherently a little bit sillier, a little bit goofier, a little bit more whimsical. It's not terrible, not awful, not always an awful thing though. Like if you, for example, a Critical Role we've talked about numerous times. There's several streaming shows, Dimension 20 and various others, the Dungeon Dudes, where it's fine to be a little whimsical even in a dark world. It can actually be a lot of fun at the table. But it can, if you are a group that prefers to keep the tone standard or keep the tone very controlled, this is something that could be a problem. The player who uses it also gets a lot of high visibility, right? This becomes, it's almost like an instant spotlight moment when you pull out the Wand of Wonder, because everybody's like, ooh, what's going to happen, right? And it's local chaos. It's not campaign scale. It's campaign scale chaos. It doesn't rewrite your life or your wealth or your goals or your place in the campaign, but it does allow you to have a comic social scene or a desperate escape, or maybe even win an overwhelming fight. But the result quality is just so variant. It Fireball, Lightning Bolt, that's awesome, right? But losing a turn, turning yourself in blue, making the grass grow, that is a wasted turn. That, hey, we have an episode on TPKs talking about how losing turns can lead to the action economy, can lead to a death spiral, right?
Yep.
So yeah, definitely don't use the Wand of Wonder in a very high stakes environment, or you could lead your party right into a TPK. And I bet there are people out there who have stories about a Wand of Wonder that really screwed up an entire battle that otherwise would have been winnable.
Yeah, I mean, casting darkness at the wrong time is pretty bad.
Could be really bad. If your primary pleasure is tactical efficiency, do not use this item. If you
because like the more random an outcome is, the
Yeah.
less you can plan around it, obviously, right?
And again, this is kind of one of those issues where you're making it everyone's problem, not to the same extent as the Deck of Many Things, but you are making it your party's problem. The Wand of Wonder can create effects that drastically change the battle for your entire group, and that is, or change. And I mean, it can. When I say battle, change the scene, because it could be a social scene where you use it as well. Although, wow, that's a really risky thing to pull out in the middle of a social scene. I need to convince the king to support us. I'll use the Wand of Wonder. Oh no, Lightning Bolt.
Better Lightning Bolt than Stinking Cloud.
Yeah, I mean, again, depending on that would ruin a social scene for sure.
Yeah, like, I feel like randomness plays in a spotlight a little bit, because the more danger there is of a bad outcome, the more people are going to be intrigued by a roll. Like, when it's a combat turn and like, okay, if you land the hit, it's good. If you don't, okay, fine. We expect you're going to land about 60% of these in a 4-round combat. It's fine. That's not as tense as you have a 20% chance to win the campaign, right? So like the stakes of the roll matter, but also like the possibility of the outcome being positive, or et cetera, et cetera.
That is true. And we got another super chat from Avani DK. Not the Wand of Wonder, but we have had a campaign with a wild mage that at level 1 wanted to cast mage armor, got a wild surge, and rolled fireball centered on target, which created a TPK. That does deserve a round of applause.
Powerful.
Wow, what a way to go. Shockingly, the very next thing I wanted to talk about was wild magic surges.
Can you indulge me with one more chart by a chance?
Sure.
This is no, this is wrong. This is a very specific bell curve for 5d6.
This
and
is
as
fireball,
you can see,
right?
Yeah, fireball's damage. As you can see, it is usually more than a starting character's health.
Right, because 14 and 15 are very achievable.
Yup.
Even a barbarian typically doesn't start with that many. Well, no, they can start with that many hit points, but you're talking like he's the only survivor, right? At that point.
It's pretty total. Yay, bell curves. This is so cool.
Wow.
Anyway.
Fun fact, in the D6 Star Wars game, I rolled Yahtzee. I got all 6s on a D6 roll once for an attack on a player character. And I said, do you know what the odds of this are? And the other player's like, I have no idea. And I'm like, listen, I'm afraid the universe has just decided that your character needed to go. Because the odds of that happening are insane.
the most killed someone has ever been in Star Wars, which is saying something. There are a lot of pretty incredible deaths in Star Wars.
Well, he was riding a speeder bike around a moon, if I remember right. Oh, yeah, it was just, anyway, crazy.
And then he hit a tree at max speed.
A moon tree.
And there was a Wilhelm scream.
Yes. All right. Are you familiar with wild magic surges and what they are?
Yeah, I am. They are a shard of random effects added to a spellcast.
Yes, and they have gone through evolutions. They've been around a long time. Again, not quite as long as the Wand of Wonder, but they've been around a long time. In the 2014 era, it was actually standardized as an option for sorcerers. This is something you could just have as part of the game, as part of building your character. So for the last 12 years, everybody, oh my God, what even is time? For the last 12 years, this has been something that a game master has to reckon with, because it is literally something anybody can choose. It's not like Wand of Wonder where you have to deliberately put it in the campaign. It's not like a deck of many things where you have to put it in the campaign and the players have to do it. This is a choice you can make before the game even begins that can make you specifically, Jeff, the sorcerer player, everyone else's problem.
They can be funny, but they can also derail things or cause real problems. And I would be lying if I said I didn't kind of squint and side eye at people who played wild magic characters, because they are accepting a certain level of risk for the entire table.
Yeah, I hate to say it this way, but I feel like there is a certain level of entitlement for a person who chooses to inflict themselves on the rest of the group like this. So how does it work? If you're a wild magic sorcerer, anytime you cast a spell, at least in 2014, you roll a d20, and on a 1, you roll on the wild magic surge table, and the effect on that table is different and distinct from the spell that triggered it. The outcomes are very broad. It can change your appearance. It can cause magical effects around you, teleport you, create a fireball centered upon you. The point is not that magic sometimes fails or goes awry, because the original spell still does go off. It's just that extra magic happens. In 5.5, which is, of course, the 2024 edition, you have the option to roll the dice after casting a spell instead of you always roll, which is
That
nice.
doesn't sound wild at all.
Well, yeah, but it might be a little bit more less disruptive, maybe, shall we say?
Like, I almost prefer it being mandatory, because when it's like your choice and you're choosing to do it every time, like, come on.
That's even more entitled, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, why do you have to pick this?
It feels like a pick me, right? Like, hey, pick me. I am the guy who can screw everyone else over. Right? Oh, I don't know.
Waggling their eyebrows, like, hey.
I'm sorry. I know.
I cast Detect Thoughts. Would you like a wild magic surge? Of course I would. It's what my character would do.
Honestly, though, I think it's actually a great choice for a streaming. Like, if you're gonna play your game online and show it to everybody, this is a really good way to get some big moments at the table.
Oh yeah, and it can be great fun. It can. It's the kind of thing everybody should be cool with in session 0, because it can derail stuff, believe it or not, to have fireballs blow up when you're doing social scenes.
Mickey, stopwatch. Vera, bro, I just need my hit. Just let me
I'll hit you, all right.
I need the rush. Yeah, no, it is. It's a little bit of a there's a little dopamine hit when you do this. It's true.
Well, it's exciting, right? Like, gambling is fun. We like gambling. It's exciting. It's thrilling to have an unknown outcome. It's thrilling to have a situation become more complicated.
The risk is what's thrilling about it. Yeah.
but you're
Oh,
often risking the narrative.
well, that is what's at risk in some cases. Uh, if you want to have the concept of chaos in your game, though, it can be fine to do wild magic. It's less crazy than a Wonder Wonder. It's less crazy than Deck of Many Things. And if you are one of those people that feel that your table is a little too tame, a little too forgiving, maybe. Look at Vera's face right now. If you're a person that feels like your table is a little too boring, playing a wild magic sorcerer can be a way to add a lot of spice and uncertainty, which that's not necessarily a bad thing.
I just feel like there's better ways to make things more interesting than random fireballs.
I personally would never play a wild magic sorcerer for the reasons I've listed earlier. But
for me, the most exciting reason to play a wild magic character is because it's narratively relevant and it's a problem they feel bad about. It's like, okay, something is wrong with my magic. I'm trying to fix this, or like this is a thing that just happens to me, and it is intriguing from that point of view. Like, it makes them scared to cast, which is compelling, right? It adds stakes. That can be really cool.
There's a comment I'd like you to read.
The all wild magic party is a legendary good time, though. Okay. All wild magic sorcerers.
Well,
all
actually,
Wanda Wonders.
There's a barbarian path now that also does wild magic. Yeah, I know.
Good.
You can surge your wild magic as a barbarian.
This is all very playable. Yeah, great. God.
But you're right. Yeah, give them all Wands of Wonder and deck and put in a Deck of Many Things while you're at it. Just go. I'll go all in or go home, baby. With the gambling metaphor.
And yeah, like Wesley's notes. Oh no. Scared to cast. Wild magic sorcerers, I just want the world to explode. That strains my suspension of disbelief a little bit. I think it'd be kind of stressful to have random magical effects happening when you cast things. I think that this is a symptom of the player being kind of wacky and not really thinking about how that would fit into their personality. Which is fine in some games.
The wild magic barbarian is a little bit tamer than the wild magic sorcerer. So,
well, yeah, like I feel like with the barbarian, like there's a cool angle for it. There are really cool things you can do here, but I want it to like speak to that, you know.
Would you like to discuss anything else about chaotic random table elements at the table, or if not, I was going to move on to some of the task resolution randomness.
Let's think about a theoretical character who decides all of their actions by flipping a coin.
Like a Two-Face.
A theoretical character.
Right.
Who decides all of their actions.
Legally distinct character.
Theoretically, this could be really compelling. Like if they were to be in combat against their rodent-themed foe and had like some kind of advantage over them that they were compelled to give up because the coin came up tails. That could be really narratively compelling. But the probability of that happening in a real game is only 50%. And half of the time, the thing will happen that is less interesting. So that theme of probability is interesting, intriguing, adds tension, but the practical randomness of it doesn't always align with the cool outcome. And this tension is the core one in determining outcomes randomly. When is this actually cool? When is the idea of this cooler? When do we roll it all?
Right, because role-playing games are not stories, not traditional stories, certainly not traditional novels. They are interactive improv play, right? Like a much better way to describe them. So the ideas of things that change the tone or change the stakes or change the consequences can be more impactful because more people are involved, and it's a group effort rather than a singular person telling a story, right?
Exactly. And like a lot of the time it can be useful for the GM to consider maybe this isn't even worth a roll. Maybe the outcome here is so obviously good for the narrative, so story forward, so interesting and cool. We should let this slide. That is okay to do.
It is. And I think the best description I've seen of this is if the outcome is not dramatic, you don't need to roll for it.
Yeah, for sure. Like if it's dull, if it's kind of menial, like why not? Let it happen. On the contrast side, if the outcome is like really dramatic, sometimes maybe that's also okay to let happen.
I have some examples of this.
Please, yeah.
All right. So the traditional example of what, do I need to roll for this is like opening a locked door, right? I'm a thief. I have my lock picks. The door is locked. If I do not roll to open the door doesn't open because it's locked, right? Or we'll have to find some other way around, which frankly, that is an option that most players kind of ignore when they find a locked door. They're not like, oh, we can go around or we can find another way. Usually it's like, oh, well, I guess that we're just completely blocked out from that. That's usually how people react, right? But so the consequence to the roll is important. It needs to happen because otherwise the door will remain locked.
Right.
But there's the much more trivial matter of, I'm playing Tarzan, all right, in a game, and I want to swing on a jungle vine and run on a tree branch and do a cool double flip and land in front of the party and do my Tarzan yell, right? Should I have to roll for that? No, I'm fucking Tarzan. I can just do that.
Yep.
Right? There's nothing dramatic about Tarzan failing to swing on a vine.
Yeah, and like having it established that the character can just do things that other members in the party might need to roll for can also be interesting. Like I played a war dancer in Warhammer Fantasy. She could just like run on the tops of fences and stuff. Fuck it. Yeah, okay, yeah, you can do that because that's the kind of character that is.
Now, again, I had that friend I talked about earlier in the episode who says that there's always drama in the dice. And he's still kind of right because with the right group at the right table, maybe you do roll for normal things because it is a little bit more jokey or whimsical, or maybe you're playing characters that are more parodies of themselves. Maybe I'm not Tarzan. Maybe I'm George of the Jungle, and maybe I do need to roll to swing on a damn vine. But you know what I'm saying is that it depends on mindset, really. A lot of it depends on the mindset. And I would say most games, like in the Venn diagram, like the core center, most games are going to get by where the game master just says, okay, if it's something trivial and there's nothing really important about it, you just do it and move on. Because the more, as you have pointed out, the more interesting rolls are the ones that happen in situations where the consequences are high, or the stakes are high, or the drama is high. If you are meeting the king and trying to get him to fund your adventure, and this is really important, then it matters to roll that dice. And everybody's like, ooh, what are we going to, there's investment, it's engagement with the group. You get that memorable moments. Whereas, again, in a more jokey campaign, maybe George of the Jungle's like, okay, yeah, I intentionally failed to swing on the vine. It's more funny, right? Because watch out for that tree, says the exiled one. Yeah, it's going to depend on your group a lot of the time. But I would say most tables are going to do well if the game master is less concerned about rolling for everything and more concerned about rolling when it matters, when it's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's the kind of thing where, again, like I think that player experience and some level of understanding on everybody's part can be beneficial, right? Like this is this sort of realm where a little bit of good faith and a lot of understanding of the vibe you're trying to go for can go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. Vonnie points out that Tarzan does not need to roll to swing on Divine if he's just moving through the jungle doing normal jungle things. However, if headhunters are shooting knockout arrows after him to bring him back to their queen, you must be talking about Opar. Hey, Tarzan fan here.
Very cool.
Opar is a very interesting character. Check her out. Nevertheless, yeah, he's right. That is when it is important to find out if he can make that swing.
He's not rolling to swing in the vine. He's rolling to contort himself through arrow fire as he swings on the vine. It's
much different
complicated.
story. Yeah, different story.
Failure doesn't mean that he fails to swing. It means he is knocked off when arrows hit him.
Exactly.
It's important to like not randomize things that failure would disenfranchise the character entirely. Like, it can feel very bad to be unable to do very simple things. There is a notorious example from my table playing Dark Heresy, where we were trying to requisition in Dark Heresy 2e soup and could not do so for 40 minutes. And it was the dumbest fucking thing in the world. And everyone was sick and tired of it. It led to a huge argument. It is still notorious to this day. Because why? Literally, why? We just wanted a meal. Not even good soup. Bone meal is fine. It's whatever. Well, we'll take the cornstarch gruel. It's anything goes. It was just ridiculous.
I have a story about the opposite end of the spectrum, too.
Yeah.
I was running a game, a very long running game. This went for like 20 some odd sessions, and we had 2 sequels to it. So it was a very big game for me. And one of the climactic moments of that campaign is where 2 characters are trying to disarm a nuclear weapon at the heart of the city.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the value of hindsight, I can look back and say they probably shouldn't have had to roll for that, because what if they fail? Right. That is, the stakes are too high for randomness in this case. This is a consequence that is too important. And to be fair, I'm not sure what I was thinking, but I rolled into that session and they went to disarm the bomb, and I said, "Great, roll your skills," and they failed to disarm the bomb. And I was like, "Oh shit, what do I do now?" Right. Ultimately, my solution was to say that something kept the bomb from exploding, and they sense that there will be massive consequences for the intervention that occurred. Mm-hmm. So I think I managed to like pull some sort of like resolution out of my butt that wasn't entirely terrible, but it wasn't great. It wasn't great at all. So yeah, there's examples of roles that are just too important to make, right?
There is also the legendary technique that shares the name with a legendary confectionery, fudging, and that is easier to do at in-person tables. I don't like this. I don't like it. But
yeah, I'm not a fan of fudging either. But you're right that sometimes you do. Sometimes it may be the only solution.
We'd be remiss to not mention this as a possibility. Fudging is where you pretend to roll the die and say the outcome is whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of lame for a couple of reasons, ranging from
super lame.
Yeah. I would say it is best used, honestly, for really low stakes things.
Interestingly enough, I would actually say it's only really applicable if it is absolutely crucial to keep the game going.
Well, you can like roll a d20 behind the screen and then say, "You notice X actually." And that's like a prompt that can lead somewhere, which isn't crucial, but like is good for flow. And nobody will ever notice that because it's the most mundane thing in the world.
But Vera, why is fudging bad?
Fudging is bad because you're lying and it makes you go to hell.
It damages trust between the game master and the party. And that is a thing that is very difficult to repair once it is damaged.
Yeah, like it's bad to have the party constantly in doubt that their victories are earned or that their losses are earned at the worst part.
Both of those outcomes are bad, to be clear.
Like the push and pull between probability and tension and good planning is that it should reward your players mechanically and statistically to do things intelligently. Right? And when they feel that it doesn't matter anymore, they're less invested.
Golden Chaos says, "That's why you never admit it, Ross." Okay. I mean, there is a certain mystique to the game master's role. I will admit to that. But my advice to all of you game masters out there, anybody who's listening to the show, if you're within the reach of my voice, my advice is don't do it. Just don't do it. Just try not to do it.
Make actual fudge instead. Bring that.
I'm glad
Everyone
you
will
brought
like
that
that.
up, though. Yeah. Everyone. I actually have the widget for that. Boop.
Great, excellent.
I actually have it. I actually have the thing for that. I rarely get to use it, so there it is. Fudging stats is more like how I like to handle it. Is the inline. Okay, so I will admit that fudging hit points is the most that is the way in which I will sometimes fudge. And the reason why is sometimes like you have a pacing issue. Like, hey, I've got a player who's got a hard out at 5 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock. This battle's going to go on a really long time, and the monster only has like 5 hit points left, and the player attacks it with this awesome, really cool, really well designed moment, and everybody's like, "Oh my god!" And he rolls and does 4 damage, which leaves the monster with 1 hit point. That is the circumstance where I'll be like, "Yeah, you kill him. He just you got it. There he goes." Because 1 hit point, even a fraction of the total of number of hit points, whatever that number happens to be, sacrificing that in favor of good pacing, I feel like that's a reasonable trade. And it's not a dice roll. I'm not fudging a dice roll. I'm just fudging a number in the monster's stat block, which I think most players are okay with you doing. But
yeah, and the less you actually have to compromise to make that happen, the better it'll feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like when I bump my students' grades from 89.4 to 90. Like this is a feel good kind of thing, and it's close enough. It's fine.
Grading on the curve. Ivani DK says another anecdote from our Planescape group. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ivani. Another anecdote from our Planescape group. Some might be aware of the Great Modron March adventure chain. We never played through them because we failed every single roll for every single adventure hook. Yeah, that's rough. Not such a great March, I guess. Oof.
Yeah, Blaze Hugh is actually describing a situation with the Star Wars dice where he says, my player's star pilot failed to drive a carrier out of a black hole event horizon with a triumph. Failed with a triumph. So I let the mechanic try to boost power to the engines. He also failed with a triumph.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, and he says, in the end, I let the carrier get off, but on their YT 1300. Yeah, so there was some kind of consequence for the success, even if it wasn't technically a success. Yeah, that is not a bad example of fudging in a certain way, because you technically the dice said it didn't succeed, right? But
it's an interesting outcome, though.
Right. The goal. Remember the number one goal from our Dungeon Mastery episode. Everyone has to have fun. That's the number one goal. And if you accomplish that, you did a good job. It doesn't matter how. It honestly doesn't matter how you get there if everyone had a good time.
Well, the most important thing is having fun, right? This is the so-called rule zero.
Correct. Absolutely correct. But one of the best ways to get there is to have trust, and that's why fudging is generally bad. Okay. Did you have more you wanted to say about fudging?
Vanilla fudge tastes really weird.
All right, I want to briefly talk about some of the randomness in task resolution during a game. Vera, what is task resolution in a role-playing game?
Task resolution is outcome, right?
Yeah, this is your 3d6. This is your d20. The charts that you put up earlier are exactly how those things work. Now, there are a few things that are swingy, right? There's the idea of a critical hit or a natural 20 or a natural 1 or a critical fail. Those are a slight secondary layer of uncertainty, right? Because the impact is a little bit different. Like it changes the D20 from success or fail to success or fail with very small chances for a high impact success or a high impact fail.
Well, and it can also affect like certain less intuitive outcomes. Like to give a specific example, there is a mechanic in casting in Warhammer Fantasy wherein a critical success on a language magic test to cast a spell can, if I recall, ignore the SL requirements for the channeling of that spell, the normal ones. So there is a school of thought wherein you can just like fish for crits by having a high base score and not worry about like amassing power beforehand.
Yes, crit fishing is a very valid approach. It's been a very valid approach for a lot of games. I remember 3rd edition D&D where you could have a knight mounted on a horse with a lance do something like quadruple damage on a critical hit.
Oh yeah, like the crit fishing shaped a lot of builds in D&D. Weapons like the falcata or the scythe or the pickaxe would have builds dedicated to them because the swingy outcome that you could build into was so rewarding, it made the entire build come together when you landed it.
Right. But then there are critical effects that go even further. Now, we've talked about this in Dark Heresy. We have an episode on Dark Heresy. Go check that one out. And how the critical hit tables can be very visceral and make a combat feel extremely bloody and gory. I think I've told the story of my journey into Moria with Rolemaster and the critical hit charts there. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today is the critical hit charts of Rolemaster, because they were literally insane. This was answering the question of like, okay, if I have a major success or a major failure, what exactly does that do? All right. The typical sequence is you make your attack roll, you add your modifiers, you then look at the weapon armor result table, you figure out your damage, and then if it's a critical, you figure out what grade of critical it is from A to, I think, G. It was a letter system. And then you roll on that A through E, through E. And then you roll on that critical chart system. And that critical chart system is actually subdivided by damage type: slashing, puncturing, crushing, heat, cold, electricity, etc. And then you roll percentile dice to figure out the result. And if that sounds like a long chain of events to figure out exactly what happened on a swing, welcome to Rolemaster.
Where you have to like master all the roles to play, I guess.
I mean, it's a little on the nose, but it's technically ROLE master, not ROLL master. But
it doesn't sound like it.
I have a friend who used to call the system "roll, you bastard," because there were so many dice rolls involved. But what it did do is it made your hits, especially your major hits, very specific. Instead of like, oh, you take 14 more damage, you could inflict bleeding or stun the target or break their limb, maybe even cut out their eye, knock them out, cut a limb off. The charts got pretty wild, and it gave the damage type a bit of fictional weight, because a crushing mace blow and a puncturing spear and a slashing sword, they didn't just use different damage numbers, they led to different kinds of harm, a different level of cool factor, if you will, in the gory description that you were then able to apply as a game master. I have an infamous story where ring wraiths killed themselves with critical hits in their first and only encounter in Middle Earth Roleplaying.
Very badass thing to do.
The severity structure, lower level crits were painful but manageable. Extra damage, maybe a brief stun, limited bleeding, short-term penalty. Your higher crits are where the reputation for the system comes in, because you could get severely incapacitated, you could get permanently injured, or instant death. And these crits did not just apply to the NPCs, it could apply to the player characters. So there was instant death appeared roughly 2% of the time on a critical chart, on the A critical chart, and about 15% of the time on the E critical chart. Okay. 15% of instant death doesn't sound like a lot. Vera's a math gremlin. That can be actually quite a lot, right?
It starts to feel like a lot when you're critting regularly.
the Rolemaster style criticals, they show that randomness can determine the shape of the consequence, not just the success or failure. They can really help narrow it down and say, this is really what happens. Okay. And sometimes the descriptions, like in Dark Heresy, can be so good, so, enjoyable to read aloud at the table that it can become a legitimate feature. There's a game called Arduin Grimoire from the 70s that I played an adventure for. And I remember the only thing I remember about that adventure, honestly, is the critical result I got on their crazy ass table, where I rolled so well. The dice were hot for me that day. I rolled so well on this critical hit that in the Arduin Grimoire system, an avatar of Death himself showed up to applaud me for the kill. He was so impressed. He just I did a slow clap in the background.
Wow, cool.
And I gotta admit, I was like, that feels pretty rad. Wow, that's, thank you very much. I took a bow and everything. But
you sure murdered that guy.
I
like
sure
that about you.
Guy. So the critical hit traits like this, they do bridge a gap between a numerical resolution and an emergent narration. And they're random enough to create surprise, but concrete enough to change what you do next. But it does make the game feel arbitrary, a little more lethal, and certainly more character ending than typical combat. And as I described with the whole resolution system alone, it is a lot of dice rolls to get here. So it's kind of time consuming and burdensome as well. What do you think about this kind of stuff? We talked about we talked about the Dark Heresy one. I remember you being a fan of it. But specifically the Rolemaster version of this, what do you think?
I think that having grades of critical hit can be pretty rewarding. I am a crit fisher at heart. I love that style of play. I like to see high variance in outcome because it shapes the kind of enemies you pick. If you have a 15% chance to instant kill a foe and you critical hit them, you are going to hit the biggest guy in the room. Always, because you should, because you are wasting that instant kill on a lesser foe. Right? The range of possible outcomes, and especially the top end, will naturally determine what it's optimal for you to do, which can inform your playstyle, which can inform the vibe of your character, the kind of things they do. I love Dark Heresy crits. I love them. I think they're super exciting. I really like flavorful high-end outcomes and what the possibility is for tailoring them to the situation. I think this realm of top-end variants is a really exciting one for cool moments. Whether it's some angel of death appearing going yo, big ups, or it's just a fountain of gore. It's pretty fucking rad when it happens at the right time. And it's never bad to hit your top end, right? It's never a bad thing to have the swing of positive variance be in your favor. The problem occurs when enemies can do the same thing to you, because it is really not fun to be the recipient of a character who has, say, a plus 20 on the crit table.
I will push back a little bit. I think you saying it's never wrong is broadly true. But if you're in a circumstance where it becomes old hat, this is the 5th critical success we've had in combat and the 2nd decapitation, it can lose its impact.
Well, you can flavor it differently depending on the dramatic impetus of the thing. I think that's a skill issue. I think that is an issue of reading the table right.
It's a skill issue. Okay. No,
yeah, lopping off a couple of heads is going to feel different than your axe cleaves under their chin and a fountain replaces their helmet. That's a different vibe, right? It feels different. You got to find the impetus.
Yeah.
And the way a character feels who is rending their enemies asunder, old hat, struggling a little bit against a foe and then decapitating them. That's pretty fucking neat, frankly.
Okay.
It's all in the delivery.
That's fair. I think that's a fair point.
I think a lot of stuff comes to life in the execution, in media, in improv, in anything really. There's no bad idea for the most part. Just how it's presented, how it's framed, how it's structured. So, yeah.
Isty Alliance says, even my mom wanted to shoot a guy in the throat, Ross.
Hell yeah.
Fokano points out that the Dark Heresy system has Brutal that lets you reroll minimum damage on damage rolls. I appreciate that level of manipulation. Hey, I was part of that. Also, everybody give a big up to Fokano. He is the guy who makes all of our shorts on the channel for you, Lorebeards, and those shorts are freaking awesome. So big shout out to Fokano. Thank you so much for doing all that hard work.
Yeah, so, it's math time. Yay! So, Brutal changes the minimum range of your outcomes, which makes you feel consistently stronger. A good way to visualize this, okay, I want you to see in your mind's eye, right? 3d6. We talked about the 3d6 bell curve earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your average result is a 10 or an 11. So, pop quiz. What is the average result of a d6?
4, I guess.
3.5.
Yeah, 3. If you round up, it's 4.
So, given that the average result on d6 is 3.5, what is the difference between 1d6 plus 7 and 3d6?
A higher base, a higher floor.
But also a lower ceiling.
Right.
Your results will be tightly bonded. They are always going to be between 8 and 13. Whereas you get the entire 3 to 18 curve with 3d6.
Right.
So your results are consistent, but have a lower top end and a higher bottom end. And this will affect how results feel a lot. A lot.
Actually, so going back to the concept of credits, right? Critical hits. In Champions, for example, which is a game I played a lot of, the 3d6 is the rolls. Rolls of 3 and 18 were exceptionally rare, far more rare than a 1 or a 20 on a d20. And I'm sure you can math out why that is. I think the percentage on a d20 is about 5%, and I think on 3d6 it's like 1 point something percent. Also, the new Marvel Multiverse game uses a 3d6 mechanic, slightly altered in that one of the dice has essentially 2 6s on it, but it's very similar. And one of the things I kind of am not excited about the new Marvel Multiverse RPG is that there are several powers you can get that only activates if you get an 18 on 3d6.
It's not going to happen a lot.
Even with one of the dice having 2 6s on it, and even with the mechanic where you can re-roll your lowest dice, that is a fairly rare thing to happen at the table. And it made those kind of powers for Marvel Multiverse things that I would just never pick. Savage Worlds has abilities that only go off if you pull a Joker out of the deck when you do your initiative. And that is also an extremely rare occurrence, especially that given that the chances go up or down based on how many people are at the table. So I dislike mechanics that only activate in the most extreme, most rare edge case of randomness. I am not a fan because I feel like most of the time you're going to look at that thing on your character sheet and say, I wasted this. It's just never going to happen. Or maybe once or twice if the campaign goes longer than, say, 10 sessions.
Yeah, because things that only happen at the extreme top end of variance rarely happen mathematically. It's rough.
Spitfire 703. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah, thank you so much for the super chat. The crit table in Only War had me mark out 3 different overlapping pools of blood because they all had different effects. And that's fucking awesome. We like that.
That's rad. Yeah, Mickey Stopwatch says that kind of power only gets to activate once a campaign, maybe. You're right. That's why I do not like game design that creates those kinds of effects, because I feel like they're a trap. I feel like only a brand new player will ever take them, and it will almost never happen for that brand new player, which is not a great way to turn a new player into a long-term player, which is what I like to do. So your game design soapbox here for Ross. I've already told you what I think the original sin is. The original sin is making your boost mechanic also your XP, which a lot of games did in the 80s. And the next step up from that, the next deadly sin of game design is don't have powers or effects that players sacrifice to use that only get to be used on the most extreme end of randomness.
Yeah, like I feel like both approaches have their pitfalls. Like making things too average is boring. Like if it's just like I literally do 10.5 damage every time I hit, it's kind of dull because it's predictable.
Yes.
Variance and that discovery of what the outcome of a random roll is does a lot to inform the narrative, to shape different feelings of different scenes. I'm not saying there's no place for something that always does average damage. Pokemon does this. It's kind of interesting with some of its attacks, but it's a.
Would you say it's super effective?
Only sometimes. Like variety is the spice of life, and because variety is useful, random variance is useful, but also some things that are not variant are useful. So it's like it's a melange of different approaches, and balancing them's hard.
You know, for a vocabulary guy like me, for a guy who enjoys fun nomenclature, you are an absolute delight because you use words like melange and milieu.
I thought kind of funny, like I make silly words on the internet.
You are very sesquipedalian, Vera. All right. But I think, yeah, please, sir, my wife, she's at 1 hit point because the fireball was cold.
We can fudge it.
Yeah, that's a good one there. All right. There is some really interesting ways to use randomness, though, outside of just dice roll task resolution. And I would like to talk about the Dread Jenga Tower. Are you familiar with Dread?
I feel it every day, Ross.
Okay, not existential dread, the role-playing game Dread.
Oh, no.
I, too, am very familiar with existential dread. There's a role-playing game called Dread. It's a horror game. And the core mechanic of that game is about a Jenga tower. And it is a physical representation of the tension and the stakes in the scene, because if the Jenga tower falls, the game is over. And every time your character makes an action, if they succeed at an action in Dread, you must pull a block from the tower. So this is a uncertainty system that is not dice, but it is a way to reinforce the overall feeling of, hey, it's called Dread, which is that anticipation of something bad happening. I kind of really like the way that it all works together. I will say, as an aside, that Dread is actually a terrible game to run at a convention because most of the time the falling blocks really are disruptive to everybody else's game around you. So if you want to run Dread at a convention, like, find a very isolated place, please, for the love of God.
Mm-hmm.
But it uses a Jenga tower. Okay, and this is you actually can end up pulling more blocks than one if it's a especially dangerous or uncertain action. But if you pull the blocks and the tower is still standing, you've succeeded. But if the tower falls, your character dies. The end. It changes the emotional experience of task resolution because the risk is very visible to everyone. Everybody can see whether the tower is stable or not. The risk is cumulative because every pull after the first makes it harder. And the risk is physical is one word to use it. Haptic might be another. Your hands will shake, right? You have to assess the stability. You have to be careful about your pull. These are things that are not normally part of a dice roll, right? It's like, hey, it's all in the wrist, buddy. That's not how it works with Jenga.
So I have seen recently alternative means of task resolution that use non-die objects that rely on things such as manual dexterity or visual acuity to determine outcomes on a 20 scale, 1 to 20, such as a reflex testing stick or one of those wiggly marble puzzles where you got to get the ball in the hole, or ball and cup scenarios. And I've seen these used at certain tables to function as dexterity checks or agility checks or strength checks. Like maybe you got a grip tester, and I don't think this is like a great thing, but there is a school of outcome resolution like this that does specifically and exclusively rely on your acuity in a related field, which I think does kind of undermine some of the role-playing aspects of the thing, but is interesting.
Well, there are things I like about the dread approach with the Jenga Tower, because it's more about managing your uncertainty than randomness, and it's less about skill than choice, right? Because you have to choose whether you want to risk the action in the first place. You have to, or you choose to accept the sacrifice, right? But even the most careful and skilled player cannot fully control what that tower is going to do, as opposed to someone who's really good at a marble game, right? For example. So it's judgment, it's nerves, physical skill, memory, and an escalating risk that affects everyone at the table. Not unlike a Wand of Wonder or a Tech of Many Things. There are some variants of Dread that I like, where it's about the heroic sacrifice. So as the tower gets more precarious, one of the players might be like, okay, you guys need to go on without me, have his cool heroic moment, choose to do something absolutely crazy, the 3-block pull, knowing that he's not going to go any further, because look at that tower, it's going to fall. If I pull 3 bricks, that thing is absolutely going to fall, right? That's an interesting bit of drama that you typically do not get with dice or other randomness mechanics. If you're looking for suspense, if you're looking for horror or survival pressure, this is an interesting mechanic. I would not recommend it for a campaign. I think this, Dread works great as one-shots with a clear ending. Like that is the best part. But
okay, but what if you had a really, really big Jenga tower?
I mean, there are giant-sized Jenga towers out there. They do exist.
No, think like complexity. Like you get like 500 pulls maybe before it falls over.
Right. Well, maybe you don't have a Jenga set, and maybe you don't want to be that asshole at a convention who ruins everyone else's game when the whole thing collapses. There are ways to do something similar that are easier, and this can be a deck of cards that you remove cards from as they're drawn, or my favorite is a bag of tokens, where you have black tokens that are the bad result and white tokens that are good result, and every time you it's kind of like Dread, you pull up to 3 tokens from the bag, right?
I like drawing lots like this. It's very ominous.
Well, it creates a visible escalation. It creates irreversible accumulation. There is you cannot undo some of the choices that you make, right? And there is that sharp terminal event when somebody pulls that black token or the tower falls, and that's a memorable thing. That's like everybody at the table can get really excited, and it can be a very sharp emotional beat in the story. Mm-hmm, so it's not just in the fiction, it's in your hands, that tension, right? That's the thing I think is kind of interesting about it. I've really never played using this mechanic, but I think it's very intriguing to me, and I wonder what you think about it, Vera.
I think it's interesting, this like inexorable march toward doom. Golden Chaos points out that 10 Candles is another system that uses this, wherein the game has a physical timer wherein you are surrounded by candles in a dark room, and they are snuffed out as you play. And when you're down to 1 candle and the light is flickering and it could go out at any moment, the game is in its worst, most frantic state. Because I believe part of how 10 Candles is played is that if the candle goes out accidentally, it stays out.
I remember hearing about that.
So again, this like builds this sense of mounting dread, ill omens, and so on, and it's very visible. Like the thing that is not accomplished by the Watts in a bag scenario is you can't see the threat. You are not like aware of it in front of you. This foregrounds it. It's like the only white you have, so kind of effective.
To a lesser extent, there's the torch mechanics in Shadow Dark, where they run on a timer and you have a limited amount of torches. Shadow Dark is a very fascinating game. I have yet to play it, but I'm very interested in it, and I really like the idea of making things like light matter more than they typically do in a role-playing game. So the 10 Candles approach is one way, the Shadow Dark way is another. Aramob says, hey, you can put a snake in the bag. That'd add some danger to the draw.
Okay, this anticipates me wanting to discuss Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0, wherein they're grabbing tokens from in front of an angry scorpion repeatedly. By the way, Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 is the coolest fucking thing in the world.
You and Alexis are both big Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans. I need to get you on the same show.
It's so good. By the way, in GX, the star of the last season and the best season is a Demonet. So,
is what?
A Demonet.
A Demonet. Oh, okay. I only know, like, you know, it's Time to Duel and the Duel deck and like Dark Magician Girl. And that's like all I know about Yu-Gi-Oh! Like crazy hair.
I'm not sure how to describe this character other than like off-brand Damonette, but like, can I spoil Yu-Gi-Oh! GX a little bit? Is that cool?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
All right, so
I'll allow it.
The love interest / soul bond of the main character from GX is effectively a Damonette, and they are like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card because of course they are. But like I'm trying to like pull up an image of their design to make this clear because I don't know how you can think anything else after seeing it. Season 0 though is about a lot of very cool shadow games that relate to probability and high risk and a sense of dread, and usually there's a skill element, usually there is a chance element. This is a Damonette because what else can it be? Note the single breast, note the like divided down the center design, note the purple. Anyway, watch Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 and then do those things to your players. Send them to the Shadow Realm. Do it. Do it. Do it.
That's interesting. I like that character design actually quite a bit.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, we have been known to diverge a bit on this show. We call it anime beards for a reason when we go off on anime stuff. I want to say there are specific animes that do have like some weird randomness mechanics in them, but it's difficult to look at that in the same way because it is a scripted show, and they do kind of choose the outcome as they go, right? I think the only one I could look at maybe as being influenced by randomness would be something like Record Lotus War, which is literally based on someone's campaign, and I think you'd have to imagine that somewhere along the line there were some dice rolls that did alter how things went, right?
There is a arc of Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 that centers on a faux D&D, which I believe is actually based on early Warhammer Fantasy because it uses D100s, and it's pretty cool. And it has the most absurd finishing outcome you could possibly imagine. So I strongly recommend Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0. It's so fucking cool. I'm normal. I'm normal about it. It's fine.
There's a topic when it comes to randomness though that is, I want to know if you understand what I mean when I say a devil's bargain.
Yes. This mechanic shows up as a dark deal in some of the Warhammer games, wherein you can eliminate some element of randomness in exchange for a different consequence.
Right. This is the term, I believe, is largely coined in the Blades in the Dark game, but it has been around for a while, like you say. The basic idea is that you let the player accept some sort of complication, a definite complication, in exchange for some bonus on their roll. And the key part is that the consequence will happen regardless of the outcome. You get that bonus, which doesn't mean that the roll is guaranteed. It just means it's more likely. But the complication is always there. Does that sound right?
Yes. It eliminates a random chance to replace it with a different source of tension and decision making.
Corruption point, says Hannah.
Exactly.
Dark side points from D6 Star Wars work this way. I'm sure there's lots of other examples out there of what a devil's bargain is. I like it. I think it's a fun way to introduce something because again, it is definitely going to be a thing, right? The consequence is certain, while the action is still somewhat uncertain until they roll. And
Yeah, like it feels good to have agency.
It does, but it's also, as a game master, it gives you that little bit of the devil horns moment where you're like, hey, this is going to happen to you. You have to do this. You have to accept this if you're going to take that bonus, right? Dark Deeds, people are saying in the chat, is also is that a game? Or is
Dark Deeds is a mechanism that can resolve corruption in Warhammer Fantasy. So Dark Deeds specifically are often a consequence of a so-called devil's bargain. You take corruption points, and Dark Deeds can resolve them, wherein your character is motivated to act in a way they might not normally. Like perhaps they hesitate before firing upon a fleeing evil noble, or they feel inclined to unlatch a door. Like something comes over them and becomes a little strange, and they resolve a corruption point. Something is purged from them as they do this. Light is lifted into the some heaviness is lifted from their soul, because this is corruption taking action in the environment, and it adds narrative consequence to their dark deal.
Lawhammer makes liberal use of the mechanics as Golden Chaos, and Dark Deeds is apparently the name of Andy's actual role-playing game. Dark Deeds. And there's a reason why they call Andy Zinch, because he offers these bargains a lot.
I see why he would gravitate towards this as his game name.
I see a comment I'd like to address. Is RGBGR says, question, why Ross no VTuber yet? I am trapped in the real world. There is no escape for me.
That sounds rough, man.
As much as I would like to become a digital being like Vera, I am trapped in the real world. I am this is my doom. I have accepted it.
Well, there was a really cute Ross Watson design we had a while back.
That's right. Somebody in the chat gave us a really fun fan art piece that we have. It's really good. Become one with the Wired, Ross.
Here.
There it is. If I was to VTube, I might VTube in that manner. I'm not sure.
Look how cute he is.
Is VTube a verb now? I think it is.
Yeah, sure. We verbed it.
Flesh tuber, apparently, is my term. Wow. I really don't like that name. I really don't like that. No, gosh, no.
Why are you wearing all that flesh then? Why'd you choose that?
Oh, my God.
What's up?
Oh, Lord. That is a great piece of fan art. Thank you so much for, what is the name of that person again?
That is by Salty Jub.
Salty Jub, thank you so much. It's such a great picture. Yeah, people are encouraging me to learn how to VTube. Maybe someday, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. I am trapped in the real world. That's okay. You know what? It's fine. We have half and half, right? We get to see both sides of the equation: the digital world and the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so let's see. We have talked about a lot of interesting stuff here about the Devil's Bargain and how that works. It creates player-owned trouble. That's the part I like about it. You can't really complain that the complication came out of nowhere because you bought into it, right? It is literally, you have to consent to it to make it happen. It also makes the role meaningful before the dice even hit the table. So there's an advantage to that. I think you, Vera, would really like that part, in that it does add to the story before the dice happen to roll. And the consequences are not necessarily erased by a lucky result, which is often how it works in other games. Like if you roll really well, it doesn't matter about the consequence. Well, in this case, in a Devil's Bargain case, it still happens. This, for Blades in the Dark, this is actually part of the genre, because you're a desperate criminal. You're looking to gain a short-term leverage while accumulating all these long-term problems, right?
Right.
Oh, trust me, players can complain, says Wesley. Yes, I know. They can always complain. they don't have a standing to complain, but they will still do it anyway.
Tabletop players would never complain. Come on, not about something they chose.
Now, there is some downsides, I think, to the Devil's Bargain.
Yeah.
The pros and the cons, right?
Mm.
And I think a lot of it is a skill issue, as you would say, right?
Yes.
If I frame it as take this deal or fail, that is not the same as an actual tempting offer, something appropriate to the genre. And if the bargain ends up removing your agency or forces some sort of interpersonal conflict that you weren't you didn't really want to have happen to your character, that can violate the idea that it's voluntary in the first place, right?
Yeah, and if you have like too many of these meta choices happening, it can get convoluted and complicated. If they don't matter enough, they can make things feel lower stakes and freer. If they matter too much and are overly consequential, they can become impossible to choose and pointless. There's a lot of ways to make this not run well, and it is, again, the kind of thing where it's easier to execute on nicely if you're tuned into your players, if you all have shared expectations, if you have an effective session 0, which, by the way, we have an episode on that you can watch.
We're going to do that more and more and more as we go on, folks. This is season 2. When we get to season 5, it's going to be a lot. It's basically just going to be, okay, so we, like, these 8 topics, we've already covered them. So a question for you, Vera. The Devil's Bargain offers a guaranteed problem. How is that more satisfying than a random problem? Is it because they chose it, or is it because it's predictable, or because it guarantees some sort of future story element, or something else?
It depends. One of the primarily satisfying things about it is that it is a source of agency. You can determine something that must happen. And used liberally, this can be very empowering and satisfying to ensure that an outcome takes shape that is going to further the narrative in an interesting direction. And ideally, the consequences of this also do this and reinforce character themes and the arc of the campaign from the other, more antagonistic side, right? Furthermore, it is a source of exceptionalism. And what player doesn't want to feel exceptional? Who doesn't want to feel as if they've spat in the eye of fate and made something happen that maybe shouldn't have happened? It is satisfying to defy the odds, quite literally, right?
Yeah, I agree. Can you take over for me for just a minute while I run, and I will be right back?
Absolutely. So, like, these kinds of situations are ones in which a character can, again, take the spotlight. They can choose to force through an outcome that otherwise might not be possible. Like, the reasons that happens can say a lot about them also. Like, I've used dark bargains and dark deals in my Warhammer games. I've been the recipient of these. Like, maybe there's something that just must occur, like some feat of strength the character won't back down from no matter what, or perhaps an outcome that they would risk everything for. The ideal usage of these is when the outcome means a very great deal. And I think that if the consequences are made grave enough, you will naturally see players gravitate to treating this kind of thing with the weight that it deserves. I feel like how much it matters to be tied to the theme. I'm in a circus. Don't act like every encounter is in a soap opera. Yeah, like, you want the consequence to be grave enough that they're not relying on this sort of meta narrative impetus every time anything bad happens to them. But you want it to be something they might rely on when it feels really crucial. And that should feel like an important decision, because the second this stuff stops feeling like it matters, it doesn't matter, because as it replaces the tension of a random roll, it needs tension of its own, right? As we talked about right at the start, the discovery of what the outcome is in these games, the random chance that results in something cool happening, something dramatic happening, is sort of the storytelling engine of a tabletop role-playing game. You play your role as is shaped by the outcome the dice give you. And when you replace that with your idea, it better matter. It better feel right. It better hit hard. It better have consequence and weight. You know?
Yes, I agree entirely.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So we have covered a lot of interesting different types of mechanics. I did briefly talk about the push your luck idea with Traveler, but there are other ways to do push your luck.
Oh, yeah.
Technically, Deck of Many Things is push your luck mechanic. But I think there are other examples of this as well. But I also want to talk about like ways to use randomness for creating your campaign, doing a dungeon master side rather than the player side. This is a question for you, Vera. Do you know a book for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay called Renegade Crowns.
Yes, I've heard of Renegade Crowns.
Okay, what is Renegade Crowns and why is it awesome?
Renegade Crowns is the Border Princes book, I believe, and it allows you to generate all sorts of tumultuous, emerging would-be kingdoms within them, because the Border Princes are a place of conflict and rising and falling forces, and you sort of rely on having different factions that might mutate over time as part of a Border Prince's experience. Like, it's a place where you could seize land and become a prince on the border yourself if you can hold on to it.
Yes, and honestly, I think we should do an episode where we do generate a random kingdom in this setting, because it's really fun. It is honestly super fun. And some of the stuff that I have rolled up using Renegade Crowns is honestly some of the coolest things I've done before. I remember we rolled up a region in the Border Princes, and we ended up with like this ancient, derelict necromancer's tower that looked out over this wasteland where a ghost dwarf airship was patrolling, because they and the necromancer had gotten into a feud. And I was just like, okay, that's rad. And there was like another like random Null engineer workshop out there in the midst of the Border Princes where this guy was trying to create missiles to shoot down the moon. And I was like, okay, that is also awesome. Please give me more of that. I took some of those ideas and even incorporated them into a campaign setting I wrote called The Cursed. There's a place called Manrea, which is very Engineers Guild-ish, very Null-ish. And there's a guy with the tower with missiles who wants to shoot down the moon, because I rolled that up in the Border Princes. Renegade Crowns is so good. It's a great way to use random rolls to generate regions for your characters to adventure in that you as a game master would probably never think of. It's not a replacement for creativity, but I think it adds a lot to a region that is not especially well defined. And I think there's there can be an opportunity advantage for a game master to not have to spend a whole lot of brain juice trying to design a setting that doesn't really exist, and instead could use some random rolls to give it a skeleton that they can then flesh out.
So I think this is an important concept, which is that randomness does not replace creativity. It provides boundaries for creativity. Oftentimes, when making something, having restrictions on what you can do or what it should feel like can enable new kinds of thinking. And getting a framework to work with gives you space to operate within and to fill out, and things to brush up against and compromise. And you can fudge things in your setting, in your random generation. It can be a cool engine for this stuff. So I think that tables and stuff are amazing tools. And a lot of the books you make about fantasy now have random tables in them to enable cool storytelling, or even just to select from willy-nilly, because you'd be seeing them in a list, to like pick ones you like. All of that's valid.
Well, I think this goes back to something you were talking about, and the joy of discovery in randomness is usually on the player side, right? It's almost always on the player side, but utilities like Renegade Crowns, that gives the game master a chance to discover the world alongside the player characters, to get that joy of discovery through randomness. It's a rare thing for a game master, especially if you're the eternal DM, right? Yes, hex crawls, Mickey Stopwatch, are very similar to this, and oracle tables. Hex crawls are a version of the randomly generated terrain, region, area that is far more familiar to D&D players. Are you familiar with hex crawls?
Yes, like this is a structure of play not dissimilar to West Marches.
West Marches and hex crawls are different. Hex
in terms of cast, yes, but like the idea is similar. I think like it's go on.
So hex crawls are it's creating, how do I put this? So you have a map, typically, and that map is divided into hexes. Okay. And the idea is that the game master does not fully understand what is in each hex, aside from an overall idea of the terrain and maybe like the monsters inside of it. Okay. And so the hex crawl is the player characters are like, we're going to go this direction. They choose a direction to travel. So the game master is not always aware exactly of which hex they're going to go into. But once they're in that hex, he then has to define it and create encounters and events for that particular hex that they're in. It's a bit like random encounters from D&D, which we should probably talk about as well. But it is exploration, right? It's talking about geography and navigation and travel time and weather. It makes the map feel a bit like a place that exists independently of a scripted plot. It's kind of like a broad random encounter table for the entire outside.
And I have seen a lot of West Marches games structured like this, like being the first one to reach that space determines what it is for everybody else who explores there further, at least the energy of it, right?
Yeah, and the location, there's a thing called location-based tables that are used in hex crawls that basically encode things like politics and history, economics, ecology, tone. It just tells you briefly like what belongs in that place. Like if we had a hex that was the Ash Hills, right, next to the volcanoes, you could say, all right, so I'm going to define what that region is as game master and say it's ash storms and volcanic spirits and prospectors and goblin mining camps. That gives you at least a vague idea of what players can encounter there, but then you have to randomly generate some of those things as they go, because there's random encounters, there's regional tables, faction tables, sometimes weather is random, which frankly, weather kind of should be random. It's a very underrated thing that game masters like hardly ever think about, because they're focused on the character stories and the encounters that are coming up and building up the tension, and not so much on whether there should be rain or not on any given day. But it can, as Mickey Stopwatch points out, it can be a very powerful feeling to feel like you are exploring the map.
Yeah, like in the way it feels matters more than anything, right?
Yeah, generally speaking, yeah. Hex crawl is something I've always wanted to do. I've never managed to make it happen, but I've always wanted to do it. It's a very OSR thing, typically. Like it's part of the OSR milieu, if I may use the word. Often what game masters will do is they'll pre-roll a bunch of encounter results or weather and keep those organized so that you can move around quickly without entirely abandoning the idea of random results. But if you do pre-roll for anything, we talked about a lot of things on this table about like generating random results. And if you want to generate those results ahead of time, you certainly can. But I would certainly, if you do that, I would recommend that you don't force them to occur if they are not truly random.
I have seen a very funny method of outcome resolution wherein a tree of results is generated ahead of time and then used in order for whatever the action is, and it's hidden, so you don't know what is next up, but it can be very funny.
Yeah. And it's important to point out that like for things like random preparation for a game master, these are ingredients. They are not some sort of obligation to override your story or the player's stories or the tone, right? It's meant to just generate options for you to use rather than a straitjacket or a requirement. I want to be really clear about that. But hex scrolls like Renegade Crowns is a way to create sort of an emergent world engine, right? And you can let the world sort of develop around them as the players explore, as the players go deeper into the world. Renegade Crowns is taking that idea of the prompts, though, and making it more of a regional political toolkit. And I think there's advantages to both designs, right? The Renegade Crowns gives you a lot more flavorful things specifically for Warhammer. Obviously, it won't work great if you don't like the Warhammer flavor, if your game diverges a great deal from Warhammer flavor. But the hex scrolls are a little more applicable to just about any genre. You can technically do them in a cyberpunk city. If you want to do a night city hex scroll, you technically could. like what an example of an encounter table in Hexcrawl might have. What kind of enemies will I find? What kind of neutral encounters or friendly encounters can I have? What kind of faction activity is there? Can I find environmental things like storms or magical disturbances? And what discoveries might exist there? And the discovery is actually my favorite part, because you're talking about like shrines and ruins and forgotten paths, old camps, wrecks, natural resources, hidden entrances to the Underdark. Those are all things you can find as discoveries. Honestly, I think that is my favorite part of the Hexcrawl idea, is that you can sort of plant little seeds that can lead to all kinds of other things, and they feel like a discovery, which is like the coolest part to me. Social situations should be on your encounter list, like arguments, arrests, if it was a cyberpunk city, and then lastly, some sort of escalation, like if a faction's about to make a move or the enemy's about to advance their plan. That is also part of the Hexcrawl. You can, every time they move from one hex to another, it's assumed that a certain amount of time has passed. And that can help advance things like timelines or agendas or plans if you have that built into your campaign. So one approach to Hexcrawls is to divide them up into things like story, exploration, and like combat encounters, which is fun if you want to do it that way. It's not. It depends on how fast your characters are moving, and if they like to take their time in a hex, or if they like to travel a lot, during the day. How much progress do they want to make is kind of a big part of hex crawls. But that is another interesting way for game masters to use randomness to then generate the game, which I think is fascinating. What else would you like to talk about with randomness in role-playing games, Vera? Yeah, we've covered a broad amount of things today.
Well, we should mention random encounter tables, right?
Right. What is a random encounter table, Vera?
A random encounter table is a random table full of bad things that can attack you.
Typically, yeah. They, especially in the early days, they started out as just something you would find in the dungeon. It gave the game master a series of options for something to happen to break up, the typical I kick in the door and kill the orc and get the gold kind of moment, right?
Yeah, and these tend to give you some idea of like dungeon ecology or regional ecology, like what kind of thing can you expect to see. And frankly, I think they're often most useful as applied like this. Like what sort of thing could apply here? What could show up? Because the kind of enemies you want to put your party up against will vary a lot depending on composition, how healthy they are, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, Mickey Stopwatch has a comment here that I think is actually appropriate. He says, D4 green dragons attack your level 1 party.
Doesn't that sound fun?
Honestly, I think one of the best things about random encounter tables is they are not necessarily balanced. And I think the world actually feels bigger and more interesting if you see things, maybe not are forced to fight, but see things that are way out of your league. Imagine you're a low-level party in Forgotten Realms, right? And you are riding across the green grass of the Sword Coast as you're heading toward Neverwinter, and suddenly swooping by overhead is a shadow dragon ridden by a Zentarum wizard who doesn't even have time for you. You are not even on his radar. He's busy with other things, and he swoops by and he just keeps on flying into the distance. But that does add some flavor to the world. It makes you say, oh shit, those guys literally are just out there. We could just run into them, and if we were to somehow get their attention, that would be bad.
Yeah, like the keyword here is encounter, not fight, right?
Right. Encounter does not necessarily mean combat, to be very clear. Also, random encounters are a fun way to spice up the game if it feels like things are lagging or getting slow. We have an episode on pacing. Go check that out. The Raymond Chandler idea is that if anything ever feels boring, men with guns burst into the room, right? Random encounter can be that.
Yeah, like this is writing advice too. I tell people like drive a truck through the scene. Amazing. I
have been that guy, and I'm going to tell that guy's story. I have been that guy. I have been in a campaign where I felt like things were not particularly exciting, shall we say? And I decided to, because I was the party cook, banged together my pots and pans as we traveled in hopes of attracting a random encounter.
Wonderful. I'm sure everyone was super happy with that.
Well, I mean, I wasn't kicked out or anything, but yeah, it wasn't it wasn't the cool guy move. Let's put it that way. But it's something I've never forgotten, is that you technically can, if you want, try to attract a random encounter. And there are certain player types that will want to do this. We've all seen Critical Role. There are definitely character types that will want to do this.
We call them that guy.
It's usually. Sometimes if the group is into it, if chaos is part of the game, you know.
Well, it can be very beneficial too.
Luck.
Like, if you're trying to stage an ambush or something, attracting a random encounter to attack the bandit camp for you that is a known enemy can be very exciting and add a cool X factor. There's situations where this is awesome, and again, it pulls from local ecology, makes things feel alive. Very fun.
It can be tactical. You're right about that. That is a good point. Have you had experiences with random encounters that you would like to share?
Oh, I don't use them. I read through the list and pull stuff that feels right.
Yeah, honestly, I think the value of them has decreased over time. In fact, these days, there's actually a lot of great third-party products that are literally just, do you want cool encounters for the mountains? Here they are. Do you want cool encounters for a trip through the swamp? Here it is. And often those are far more well-developed encounters that offer a more wider variety of play, like exploration or role-playing, and then combat as well, of course, rather than just X monster appears. However, fun fact, in the very first edition of D&D had some of the strangest random encounter tables of all time, which included aliens and wandering groups of prostitutes, which I always thought was funny.
Yeah, like the more wacky your random encounter table is, the more it can change the vibe. Like, again, these are like swing outcomes, right?
I mean, it's a tonal thing, right? Like,
yeah,
a lot of what we talked about today happens to like revolve around tone, because randomness is not always going to work and play into a particular tone.
Well, the lesson is like the most extreme outcome that is possible will eventually define part of your game.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right, because over time you hit variance, and everything that can happen will happen, and then that will shape things.
I mean, that's a very specific version of Murphy's Law, isn't it? It's like you're talking. Yeah, you would just expect it. It's going to happen. If you bow at the altar of our Jesus, you will get smited eventually.
Yeah, like, you don't. If it's gonna be possible, be ready for the possibility, right? Like, don't say like, it'll never happen. It's too rare, because it will, and it'll affect the game a lot.
However, that surprise can be part of the fun.
Yeah, totally.
So, I think like one of my final thoughts on this whole episode is going to be, your mileage may vary, but personally, like for me, I love randomness. I love going full bore. Like I did that whole campaign where everything was random and it was super fun. I like sprinkling it in, with just the occasional die roll or the occasional pull of the card. Savage Worlds has the adventure card system, which is actually like another version of randomness. That's a lot of fun. Torg Eternity has the Cosm cards and adventure cards as well, which is a game I worked on and I'm a big fan of. So yes, I think randomness is pretty core to me as a role player. I enjoy the idea that not everything can be scripted or should be scripted.
Yeah, and I think part of the thrill is that like gamble of possibility and trying to play around optimizing your odds, because otherwise, you're just telling a story together, which feels very different. It's important. It's useful. It's fun.
Do you have any particular stories? I mean, randomness is, I think, one of the ways that we get a lot of stories at the table, right? I mean, you could find some great YouTube channels where they do discuss, well, we had 3 critical failures in a row, and this is what happened, right? I think the dice do create those memories.
Yeah, well, like every story you tell from a D&D table, for the most part, for any tabletop game, is shaped by the dice, right? Like, this is the heart of it. We got one from Avani right here.
Yeah, do you want to read this one?
Yeah, Avani DK, thank you so much. Another anecdote. Another campaign, I played a halfling wizard, random encounter, ambushed by an orc warband. I used charm person on one of them and found out that I could not speak orc and he could not speak halfling or common. Well, we had defeated the rest of the warband and spared him. He shouted at us the following week, and when we finally found a way to communicate, he told us that we'd beaten his chief. He now was a part of our band.
Nice.
Heck yeah, he was charmed.
I've told the story before, but one of my favorite bits is I played a character who was a skill monkey in 3rd edition. I had like lots and lots of skills, and one of my best things was finding and defeating traps. We went into a Assassin's Guild headquarters where like everything was trapped. The candles were poisoned. The carpets were poisoned. There were all kinds of traps everywhere. We found a secret door, and I said, "Okay, I searched for traps." And I rolled a 1, natural 1. And I looked at the game master and looked at the rest of the party, and I said, my character very confidently tells you it's perfectly safe. Because that's the kind of character I was playing. And the game master goes, oh boy, this is going to be rough. And the paladin, guy playing the paladin, looks at me very doubtfully. He's like, why would this be safe? This is a secret door in the Assassin's Guild. Everything else is trapped. Why wouldn't this be trapped? And I said, it's fine. It's safe. Don't worry about it. All right. So he opens the door, the secret door, and the game master goes, aha, you hear an ominous click, and then he rolls a d20, and he gets a natural 1. The game master just kind of slumps his shoulders. He goes, and nothing happens.
You were right. It was safe.
Right. It was perfectly safe. That is the kind of story that can only happen with die rolls, with randomness. And I love it. It has enhanced, I think, almost every aspect of my enjoyment of role-playing games, which is why I say you'll take my dice for my cold, dead hand. It's not that I don't enjoy diceless games. It's just I don't prefer them.
It's a wonderful thing. They can shape the narrative in cool ways. You gain a new party follower, a cool orc who's looking up to his new chief. You have a memorable moment where critical fails compound to create comedy. You have a dramatic resolution where the last die roll, when you're low on health, is a critical success. All of these things can make for cool moments and cool memories, and they're only possible because of the randomness inherent to the game.
Absolutely. Well, we are in our last bit of the show, and hey, we have worked out. Vera and I decided to come up with a random table for our sign-off in honor of this episode.
How appropriate. Do we have these numbered yet?
Yes, there is 10 of them, so I need you to roll a d10 to see which sign-off we will be using today.
All right, let's see here. Hang on. We got a 2.
All right. So I've got it here. I'm going to send it to you in the chat for Discord.
Reping me. Thank you.
There you go. All right. So we have a random roll for our sign-off, which I think is just great for this specific episode. Vera, where can people find you on the internets?
People can find me at Vera Similla on like all platforms. I stream on Twitch all the time. I stream on YouTube. I make cool little videos. I got YouTube shorts. I post some of those on my Twitter where you can see like cool art, cool schedules, cool stuff with me, about me. I make stuff. I do things. I'm very online. Very
cool. I am also occasionally on Twitch. You can find me at twitch.tv/therosswatson. I'm going to put up my link to my Patreon. I've been doing a lot of cool stuff on Patreon lately. One I think you'd appreciate, Vera, is I wrote up a way to play Forgotten Realms as super spies. It's called it's called Agents of Harpers. It's like an acronym. So if you want to check that out, I do a lot of stuff on my Patreon. That's where you can find me as well. My good friend Bill Keys is running a Kickstarter for his supervillain book. You can find it here, tinyurl.com/glimmers of darkness. It is a really good Kickstarter, really good friend of mine, and I actually wrote one of the adventures in the book. So if you want to see something of mine, go check it out. Maybe possibly back it. Anyway, we appreciate you guys, and we will see you next time. Let's do our sign off, Vera.
Yeah, let's do it.
Keep your lore deep
and your dice kind.
Hey! Here's
like a rolling thing, like his probability, you know?
Oh, yeah, we should. No, that's weird. That looks weird. Let's not do that.